Nestled on the serene shores of St. Simon's Island, Georgia, the St. Simon's Island Lighthouse Museum stands as a testament to maritime history and a beacon for tales of the supernatural. While its whitewashed brick tower and Victorian keeper's dwelling exude charm, beneath the surface lies a tapestry of eerie occurrences and ghostly legends that have intrigued visitors and locals alike for generations. The story of Frederick Osborne is one that lingers in the salty air of coastal winds and hangs in the echoes of a lighthouse tower that still stands today. It is a story of duty, betrayal, and the unshakable presence of a man whose life ended violently, leaving behind whispers that have not quieted in more than a century. In the year 1880, Frederick Osborne served as the lighthouse keeper. His post was not merely a job, but a heavy responsibility. Lighthouses were lifelines for sailors, guiding ships safely through treacherous waters, their beams piercing through storms and fog to prevent wreckage and loss. To be a lighthouse keeper was to live in solitude, often in harsh conditions, bound by discipline and unwavering focus. Osborne, by all accounts, was a man of integrity. He carried out his duties faithfully, maintaining the beacon, keeping logs, and ensuring the safety of those at sea. But beneath the disciplined life of lighthouse service, tension brewed. Osborne shared the lonely post with his assistant, John Stevens. Working in such isolated environments often bred friction between men. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months, with little relief from routine. Disagreements over duties, personal habits, or the smallest slights could fester into deep resentment. For Osborne and Stevens, what began as professional strain eventually spiraled into a bitter conflict. The exact cause of their dispute has never been fully uncovered. Some say it was personal, perhaps a matter of pride, jealousy, or betrayal that went beyond the duties of lighthouse service. Others believe it was a clash of personalities, the kind that becomes unbearable when two men are bound by isolation with no one else to mediate. Whatever the spark, the fire it ignited proved deadly. One night, tempers flared beyond repair. Words turned to threats, and threats turned to violence. In a moment that would stain the history of the lighthouse forever, John Stevens shot Frederick Osborne. The keeper who had faithfully tended the light was struck down not by the stormy seas or the unforgiving cliffs, but by the hand of the very man meant to stand beside him in duty. Stevens was brought to trial, but the outcome shocked many. He was acquitted of murder charges. The details of his defense remain clouded by time, but acquittals in such cases often left lingering doubts. The law may have cleared his name, but the public conscience carried the burden of unease. To this day, the verdict feels unfinished, as though the truth of that violent night never fully came to light. Yet history has a way of refusing to stay buried, especially when tragedy leaves behind unfinished business. In the decades that followed Osborne's death, stories began to circulate of strange happenings within the lighthouse. Visitors and keepers who followed reported uncanny experiences that they could not explain. Some claimed to hear heavy footsteps echoing up and down the spiral staircase of the tower. The sound was distinct, measured, deliberate, like the stride of a man on patrol. But when checked, no one was there. Others felt sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts that cut through even on warm nights, as if an unseen presence brushed past them. There were whispers, too soft, fleeting sounds that seemed to drift through empty halls. Those who worked in the lighthouse, long after Osborne's time, swore they felt watched, as though eyes followed them from the shadows. The haunting reputation grew, passed down with each retelling, until the name Frederick Osborne was inseparable from the lore of the lighthouse. Some believe his spirit lingers because justice was never truly served. Acquittal in the courtroom did not ease the injustice of his death. Others believe Osborne's devotion to duty keeps him bound to the tower. He was a man who dedicated his life to tending the light, and perhaps in death he cannot let go. For those who visit, the weight of history presses in with each step. The lighthouse stands tall against the sea winds, its walls aged by salt and storms, yet within, it carries a silence thick with memory. Visitors pause on the stairs, half expecting to see a figure turn the corner ahead. They stop in the lantern room, shivering despite the sun outside, wondering if Osborne is still there, silently guarding his post. Even skeptics, who come with firm disbelief, admit to a strange unease. Rational minds might explain away footsteps as shifting wood, or drafts as quirks of old stone. But there is something different about a place tied so closely to a violent end. Spaces absorb emotion, and this lighthouse carries the mark of betrayal and bloodshed. The tale of Frederick Osborne has become more than just a historical tragedy. It is a reminder of the human cost behind the lonely, demanding life of lighthouse service. It is also a story that blurs the line between the past and the present, suggesting that some events are too powerful to fade quietly into history. Over 100 years have passed since the gunshot that ended Osborne's life, yet his name remains spoken in hushed tones by those who walk the lighthouse halls. His story is not a mere anecdote in maritime history, but a lingering echo, a presence that refuses to be silenced. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, there is no denying that the spirit of Frederick Osborne lives on, not only in the footsteps and chills reported by visitors, but in the way his tale continues to be told. The beam of the lighthouse still cuts through the night, guiding ships as it always has, but within its walls, another light burns, a memory, a presence, and a story of tragedy that time itself has not been able to extinguish. The sea has always demanded loyalty from those who live beside it. Its moods are unpredictable, its fury unforgiving, and its vastness humbles all who dare to challenge it. For lighthouse keepers, the sea was both a master and a constant adversary, and tending the light was a sacred duty. It meant braving storms, endless solitude, and a life of vigilance. For any failure could cost the lives of sailors navigating the treacherous waters below. Among the many tales of lighthouses, one story from 1908 continues to echo a story in which devotion, desperation, and the unseen presence of the past converged in a moment that remains unexplained. It is remembered simply as the apparition of the keeper's wife. The lighthouse, standing tall against wind and time, was then under the care of its current keeper. Like many men of his profession, his duties often drew him away, whether to fetch supplies, handle official business, or tend to responsibilities beyond the immediate grounds. In his absence, the keeper's wife was left alone with the great stone tower, the endless roar of the waves, and the silent responsibility of ensuring the light did not falter. While she was not the appointed keeper, she had learned enough through years of living at the post to understand the weight of that duty. On a storm-swept night in 1908, that responsibility became all too real. Dark clouds smothered the moon, waves battered the cliffs, and the cries of the wind drowned every other sound. Ships would be pressing through those waters, seeking the guidance of the lighthouse's beam to keep them from being dashed upon the rocks. But fate intervened. Cruelly, the light mechanism faltered. The lamp sputtered, its rotation unsteady, its brilliance weakening. Alone in the tower, the keeper's wife rushed to the lantern room, her heart racing as she tried to recall the steps her husband took in such emergencies. She checked the oil, adjusted the mechanism, and worked the cranks with trembling hands, but nothing seemed to restore the beam to its full strength. Each flicker of darkness felt like a death knell for unseen sailors battling the storm below. In her desperation, she did something that would forever mark her in the annals of lighthouse lore. She cried out, not to her absent husband, not to the heavens, but to the spirit of Frederick Osborne, the former keeper who had met a violent end decades before. His name was still whispered among keepers and their families, for it was said that Osborne's presence lingered in the tower, bound by his duty even in death. Many had reported footsteps in empty halls and sudden chills, but few dared to address him directly. On that night, however, the keeper's wife had no choice. With tears streaming and fear pressing in from all sides, she called into the storm, "Frederick Osborne, if you are here, help me, please. The light must not fail." What happened next has been told with awe ever since. As if in answer to her plea, the light steadied, the mechanism began to turn with flawless precision, and the beam cut through the black night with renewed strength. The room filled with a sudden calm. Though the storm still howled outside, She stood frozen, her hands still upon the machinery, knowing she had done nothing to cause its recovery. It was as though unseen hands had taken over, restoring the beacon to its rightful power. From that moment, the lighthouse shone unwaveringly until her husband returned. When she told him what had happened, he listened in silence, the weight of her words sinking deep. Though some might have dismissed it as coincidence, others within the keeper's circles did not. For them, it was yet another sign that Osborne's ghost had never abandoned his post. Over time, the story spread beyond the keepers and their families. Visitors and locals alike began to speak of the apparition of the keeper's wife and the night she called upon a ghost to save lives at sea. To some, it was a tale of desperation answered by luck, but to others, it became proof of Osborne's eternal watch. He had been robbed of life by violence, but not of his duty. The beam was his calling, and even in death, he would not allow it to falter. Those who have studied the history of the lighthouse often return to that night as one of its most remarkable legends. Some point to it as evidence of the supernatural, a moment where the veil between the living and the dead thinned just enough for duty to transcend mortality. Others, more skeptical, suggest mechanical quirks or human error, claiming the light may have righted itself by chance. But even the most logical explanations cannot erase the profound timing of the event. For the keeper's wife, the experience left a permanent mark. She spoke of the moment not with fear, but with reverence. She believed, until her final days, that Osborne had come to her aid. Her story lent new dimension to the tales of footsteps and whispers in the tower. Osborne was not merely a restless spirit haunting his former post. He was a guardian, still tending the light as he had sworn to do in life. To this day, the account remains part of the lighthouse's enduring legend. Visitors who tours its halls sometimes pause in the lantern room, imagining the storm of 1908 and the woman's desperate plea. Some claim that even now, when the wind is fierce and the sea is raging, the air in that room grows heavy, as though unseen hands are still at work upon the machinery. The tale of the keeper's wife and her call to the ghost of Frederick Osborne stands as a testament to the human need for hope in moments of despair. Whether one views it as fact, folklore, or something between the two, it captures the essence of what lighthouses represent: a light in the darkness, a promise of guidance, and a beacon of protection against forces that seek to overwhelm. Among the countless legends tied to lonely lighthouses, few are as enduring or unsettling as the tale of the ghostly lantern-bearer. For more than a century, witnesses have spoken of a spectral figure wandering the lighthouse grounds under the cover of darkness, a dim lantern swaying in his hand as he drifts across the cliffs and pathways. The light is faint, often described as a wavering glow that flickers like an old flame fighting against the wind. Those who have seen it tell remarkably similar stories of a solitary figure moving with purpose, as though searching for something, or perhaps someone, that remains forever out of reach. The accounts vary in detail. Some describe the figure as tall, cloaked in the heavy garments typical of lighthouse keepers of the late 19th century. Others claim the apparition looks more like a sailor, drenched as if pulled from the sea itself, his face hidden in shadow beneath the brim of a hat. But what remains consistent is the presence of the lantern always there, always swaying, cutting through the dark like a faint heartbeat of light. The origins of the legend are debated. One common explanation ties the ghostly figure to the spirit of a former keeper. Lighthouses demanded a level of devotion few could endure. Keepers were bound by their duty, their lives dictated by the rhythms of storms, tides, and the endless turning of the beacon. It is said that some men gave so much of themselves to their posts that even death could not release them. According to this belief, the lantern-bearer is one such keeper, endlessly patrolling the grounds, ensuring the light remains steady, searching for signs of danger that might threaten sailors at sea. Others, however, believe the apparition belongs to a different kind of soul altogether. The island on which the lighthouse stands has a tumultuous history: shipwrecks, violent storms, and tragedies that claimed the lives of countless seafarers. Some suggest the lantern-bearer is the spirit of one of these lost men, a sailor forever separated from his ship and crew. doomed to wander the cliffs with its guiding light, seeking rescue that will never come. In this interpretation, the lantern is not a tool of duty, but a beacon of longing, a symbol of a soul still reaching out for connection after being swallowed by the sea. Reports of the lantern bearer stretch back more than 100 years. One of the earliest written accounts came from a visiting inspector in the early 1900s. He claimed to have seen a figure pacing along the perimeter of the grounds on a stormy night. At first, he assumed it was one of the assistants making his rounds. But when he approached, calling out, the figure vanished, leaving behind only the dim glow of a lantern that quickly flickered out in the darkness. The inspector's account was quietly noted in the official log, though it was written with caution, as if reluctant to admit to something so unexplainable. Since then, countless visitors and keepers' families have reported similar sightings. Tourists walking near the cliffs after sunset have spoken of a man carrying a lantern, moving slowly along the path before disappearing into thin air. Some say they have followed the light, believing it to be a living person, only to watch it dissolve before their eyes. On more than one occasion, the lantern has been spotted out at sea, bobbing upon the waves as though carried by a phantom hand. Mariners in passing vessels have reported the strange light, mistaking it at first for a distress signal before realizing no boat was there. What makes the legend so enduring is not just the frequency of the reports, but the emotional weight carried by them. Witnesses often describe a deep sense of sorrow when they encounter the lantern bearer. They feel not threatened but unsettled, as if intruding on a grief that has no end. The figure does not seem menacing, nor does it seek to frighten. Instead, it seems caught in an endless search, its lantern a fragile reminder of a life and duty cut short. Skeptics, of course, have their explanations. They point to tricks of the eye, the effects of fog and moonlight reflecting off the waves, or even ordinary people carrying lanterns, mistaken for apparitions. The mind, especially when influenced by the eerie atmosphere of a lighthouse at night, can conjure phantoms from shadows and light. But even the most rational voices cannot explain away the sheer consistency of the stories across time. The lantern bearer appears in accounts separated by decades, told by strangers with no knowledge of one another, yet the details remain strikingly similar. For the locals who live in the lighthouse's shadow, the ghostly figure has become more than just a story. It is part of the place's identity, woven into its lore, as naturally as the waves that crash against its cliffs. Some even take comfort in the idea of the lantern bearer. They believe the spirit, whether keeper or sailor, continues his vigil to protect the living. The lantern's glow is not a threat, but a reassurance that even in death, there are those who still watch over the sea. Standing on the grounds at night, it is easy to understand how such a legend persists. The wind howls through the rocks, the surf crashes endlessly, and the beam of the lighthouse cuts across the black horizon in sweeping arcs. In those moments between the light's rotations, the darkness feels overwhelming. To see a lantern glow faintly in the shadows, moving with purpose, would chill even the most steadfast heart. The ghostly lantern bearer remains one of the most persistent and mysterious stories tied to the lighthouse. Whether he is a keeper still bound to duty, a sailor lost to the waves, or simply a manifestation of centuries of human fear and longing, his presence endures. And perhaps that is the true power of the tale. It reminds us that some bonds, whether to duty or to life itself, cannot be severed, not even by death. The lighthouse stands as a sentinel on the edge of the sea, its stone walls weathered by time, salt, and storms. For more than a century, it has watched over the waters, guiding ships safely past jagged rocks and unforgiving currents. Yet within those same walls, countless visitors and staff have reported something strange, something that cannot be explained by wind or shifting stone. When the night falls quiet and the air grows still, the lighthouse itself seems to speak. Faint whispers rise from the very walls, weaving through the silence like threads of an unseen presence. Those who have experienced it describe the whispers as soft and fleeting, just beyond comprehension. They drift in and out, sometimes carried by the air, sometimes rising from the stone, as though the structure itself were alive. They are never loud, never forceful, but always just enough to make the hairs on the back of the neck stand on end. Listeners lean closer, straining to catch a word or phrase, but the whispers remain elusive, dissolving into unintelligible murmurs that fade almost as quickly as they come. The phenomenon is most often reported in the evening, during the quietest hours, when the bustle of the day has passed and the tower stands in stillness. Tourists who linger too long, caretakers locking doors, and even seasoned keepers have admitted to hearing them. What makes the whispers unsettling is not only their mystery, but their persistence, decade after decade. The accounts continue. Speculation about the source of the whispers is as old as the reports themselves. Some believe they are the voices of past keepers, still tied to the structure where they spent their lives in service. These men lived in isolation, their voices often the only human sound carried across the waves for weeks at a time. To imagine their words, their secrets, their worries etched into the very stone is a haunting but strangely fitting thought. Perhaps the walls absorbed the essence of those who lived and died within their reach, and now, in moments of stillness, release fragments of memory in the form of whispers. Others believe the whispers are older, bound not only to the keepers, but to the island itself. This land has seen centuries of struggle, storms, and tragedy. Ships wrecked on the reefs below, sailors drowned in violent seas. Families lived and died in the shadow of the tower. Each life added to the island's history, layer upon layer, until its very soil seemed to carry echoes of the past. To those who hold this view, the whispers are not voices of any one soul, but the collective memory of all who came before a chorus of the forgotten, murmuring their presence through the walls. Many stories have arisen from these encounters. One caretaker in the 1940s wrote of locking the lantern room after midnight when he heard what sounded like two men speaking low in conversation just behind him. He turned, but no one was there. The tower was empty, the only sound the steady crash of the sea below. Another account from the 1970s describes a group of visitors pausing in the stairwell, convinced they heard a woman softly humming a tune. The sound drifted down the spiral steps, vanishing before they could trace it. More recently, staff members have reported whispers near the base of the tower, where shadows gather in the corners, as if someone were pressing their lips close to the stone and speaking directly into it. Those who hear the whispers often describe an overwhelming sense of unease. The sound itself is not aggressive, it does not shout or threaten. Yet the very fact that it resists understanding makes it profoundly unsettling. It is as though the whispers contain meaning, yet refuse to reveal it, leaving listeners haunted by the possibility that secrets are being shared just out of reach. Skeptics argue that the whispers are nothing supernatural. Old stone structures often carry sound in unusual ways. The shifting of wind, the creaking of wood, and even the movement of distant voices can echo strangely in tight corridors and thick walls. To them, the whispers are merely the product of acoustics and imagination, amplified by the eerie atmosphere of the lighthouse at night. But even the skeptics cannot explain why the phenomenon is so consistent, why so many unrelated people across generations describe nearly identical experiences. For believers, the whispers serve as a reminder that the past is never truly gone. The lighthouse is more than stone and mortar. It is a vessel of memory, a silent witness to all that has unfolded around it. The walls hold stories too heavy to remain silent, and the whispers are their way of ensuring they are never forgotten. Some even take comfort in the thought, believing that the keepers of old continue to watch over the tower, sharing secrets of the sea with those who still listen. Standing inside the lighthouse on a quiet evening, it is easy to understand why the whispers endure in legend. The thick stone absorbs the cold, the shadows stretch long, and the rhythmic sound of waves becomes a heartbeat against the silence. In that stillness, the faintest murmur can feel otherworldly, as if voices are pressing through from another time. Visitors leave with the memory of those whispers etched in their minds, uncertain whether they encountered something supernatural or merely the tricks of an old structure. The whispering walls remain one of the most mysterious and enduring aspects of the lighthouse's lore. Whether they are echoes of devoted keepers, remnants of the island's long history, or simply the product of human imagination, they have become inseparable from the tower's identity. The whispers remind us that places can hold memory, that history leaves imprints deeper than we can see, and that sometimes the past refuses to stay silent. And so, the lighthouse continues its vigil, its beacon sweeping across the waters as it has for generations. But within its walls, in the quiet hours of the night, the whispers linger unfathomable, haunting and eternal, carrying secrets that may never be known but will forever be heard. The lighthouse has long stood as a beacon against the endless horizon, its tower rising like a sentinel over sea and stone. To the sailors who depended on its light, it was a symbol of guidance and safety. Yet for those who walked its halls and lived within its walls, the lighthouse carried a reputation far more unsettling. It was not just the storms or the isolation that made the place feel heavy. It was the inexplicable presence of cold, sudden, bone-deep chills that swept through rooms and passageways without warning. These cold spots have been described for generations. Keepers, their families, visitors, and modern investigators all tell remarkably similar stories. One moment, the air feels still and ordinary. The next, an unnatural chill cuts through the space, raising gooseflesh on arms and tightening the breath in the chest. Unlike the draft of an open window or the shift of weather through stone, these cold spots are sharp, sudden, and localized. You can step into one as though crossing an invisible boundary. Inside, the temperature drops alarmingly, only to vanish just as abruptly once you move away. What makes these cold spots so unsettling is not merely the change in temperature, but the atmosphere that accompanies them. Nearly every account describes a sudden weight in the air, a sense of unease that cannot be shaken. People often speak of feeling watched or even pressed upon by an unseen presence. The chill is not refreshing, not natural. It carries with it a heaviness that lingers long after the skin has warmed again. Paranormal investigators have long associated such cold spots with ghostly activity. The theory suggests that spirits draw upon energy in their surroundings to manifest, pulling heat from the air in the process. The sudden drop in temperature, therefore, is thought to be evidence of an unseen presence making itself known. Whether one accepts this explanation or not, the consistency of the reports within the lighthouse gives the phenomenon an undeniable weight. One of the earliest written accounts comes from the late 19th century, when a keeper's log mentioned unnatural chills near the stairwell that persisted even when the lamps were burning high. He wrote of shivering despite heavy clothing, and of how his lantern flames seemed to dim when he passed through a particular landing. Though he offered no explanation, his words mirror countless testimonies that would follow in the years to come. Visitors in the decades since have echoed these experiences. Tour groups often report cold patches in the lantern room, where the great light once blazed against the sea. Guides tell of tourists gasping as they step into invisible pockets of icy air, their voices hushed as if afraid to disturb something lingering just out of sight. On the grounds outside, the phenomenon is just as common. The cliffs, the pathways, even the small quarters where keepers once slept all are said to harbor places where the air grows suddenly frigid. One story from the 1930s tells of a keeper's daughter who refused to climb the stairs at night. She insisted that halfway up the tower, an icy hand seemed to close around her, making her skin crawl and her teeth chatter. Though her family dismissed it as childish fear, others who later walked the same steps admitted to feeling an identical chill at nearly the same spot. Over the years, that section of the stairwell has gained a reputation, with countless people noting the sudden drop in temperature. Modern paranormal teams have investigated these claims with instruments designed to measure environmental changes. Many of them report dramatic fluctuations in temperature, often within tightly confined areas. One moment, the thermometer shows a normal reading. The next, the numbers plunge several degrees, despite no draft or open air source nearby. For the investigators, these findings only reinforce the belief that something unseen inhabits the lighthouse, its presence revealed through the cold. Skeptics, however, offer their own explanations. They argue that old structures such as lighthouses are prone to drafts, with thick stone walls absorbing and releasing cold air in unpredictable ways. Uneven heating, gaps in masonry, or even the natural circulation of air through stairwells could account for sudden chills. Yet this reasoning does not fully account for the experiences of those who describe cold spots as confined and sharply defined, appearing and disappearing with no correlation to weather or structure. Regardless of the cause, the effect remains undeniable. Those who experience the cold spots often recall them as deeply unnerving moments. It is not just the physical chill that unsettles, but the impression of something more in awareness that they are not alone. The mind may seek explanation, but the body reacts instinctively, with racing pulse and breath held tight. For many, the memory of the cold lingers far longer than the sensation itself. Among believers, the cold spots are seen as signs of restless spirits, echoes of the keepers, sailors, and souls tied to the lighthouse's long history. Perhaps they are remnants of lives bound to duty, refusing to fade even after death. Perhaps they are warnings, subtle reminders of the tragedies the sea has claimed nearby. Or perhaps they are simply the natural imprint of a place that has witnessed too much to ever be entirely still. What is certain is that the phenomenon continues. To this day, visitors step into patches of icy air that appear without reason, their voices dropping to whispers as the chill crawls over their skin. Some flee quickly, unwilling to linger. Others remain, hoping to sense something more in the silence, convinced that if they listen closely enough, the cold itself will speak. The cold spots remain one of the lighthouse's most enduring mysteries, whether born of restless spirits, environmental quirks, or something that lies beyond explanation. They have become inseparable from the tower's identity. To walk its halls is to step into history, and sometimes into a chill that feels like the touch of the past itself. The lighthouse stands tall against the endless horizon, its spiral staircase winding upward through shadows and echoes. For those who climb its narrow steps, the experience is often as unnerving as it is awe-inspiring. The air grows heavy, the light dims, and the sound of each footfall rings sharply against the metal. Yet countless visitors and staff over the years have reported something far stranger than the architecture or the atmosphere. As they make their way up or down the spiral staircase, they hear footsteps following behind them, steady, deliberate, and close only to turn around and discover that no one is there. These reports stretch back for decades and remain some of the most consistent accounts tied to the lighthouse. The sound is not vague or questionable. Witnesses describe it as unmistakable. The hard echo of boots striking metal steps, sometimes quick and urgent, other times slow and deliberate, keeping pace just behind them. The footsteps often continue until the climber pauses and looks back. In that instant, the sound stops, leaving only silence and the steady hum of the sea outside. The phenomenon has been reported by both skeptics and believers alike, which gives it a particular weight. Tourists unfamiliar with ghost stories of the lighthouse have been startled by the sound. Staff members, hardened by years of service and maintenance in the tower, admit to moments where their blood ran cold as unseen feet matched their own stride. Even paranormal investigators, accustomed to unusual claims, have noted the footsteps as one of the most compelling experiences tied to the site. Theories about the origin of the phantom footsteps are many, but most return to the same idea, that the sounds belong to the spirits of past keepers, who remain bound to their duties. The keepers of old lived lives of isolation and responsibility. The staircase was their lifeline, connecting their quarters to the lantern room above, a path they walked countless times each day. For them, the sound of boots on metal was not just ordinary, it was the rhythm of their existence. It is not difficult to imagine that, even in death, they continued their rounds, climbing and descending the tower in eternal vigilance. Some of the earliest mentions of these footsteps appear in logs from the early 20th century. A visiting inspector noted the eerie sound while making his way up the staircase one evening. At first, he assumed another worker was behind him, but when he turned, the stairwell was empty. He wrote of the encounter with careful restraint, leaving the account vague but clearly unsettled. Later, during the mid-century years, tourists began reporting the same phenomenon with strikingly similar details, solidifying the legend into one of the lighthouse's most enduring mysteries. There are countless personal testimonies attached to the footsteps. One visitor recalled climbing halfway up the tower when she heard the distinct sound of boots following closely behind her. She froze, convinced another guest was on her heels, but when she looked back, the staircase stretched empty below. Another described the footsteps as quick and uneven, as though someone were rushing to catch up, only to vanish the moment he turned around. Several staff members over the years have admitted that they avoid the staircase at night, unwilling to risk the unnerving sense of being pursued by someone they cannot see. Paranormal researchers who have studied the site often focus their attention on the staircase. They bring audio recorders, motion sensors, and thermal cameras, hoping to capture evidence of the unseen. In many sessions, investigators claim to have recorded the sound of footsteps even when the stairwell was visibly empty. The metallic clangs echo clearly, distinct from the creaks and groans of the old structure. These recordings have become a central piece of evidence for those who believe the lighthouse is truly haunted. Skeptics, however, argue that the footsteps can be explained by natural causes. They point to the acoustics of the spiral tower, which can carry sounds in strange ways. A single person's movements might echo back, creating the illusion of another set of steps. Shifts in the metal or the settling of the structure could also produce noises mistaken for footsteps. Yet those who have experienced the phenomenon insist it is too precise, too deliberate, to be explained away as mere acoustics. The sound feels intentional, as if someone unseen is following directly behind them. For those who believe, the footsteps are not necessarily malevolent. Many interpret them as signs of devotion, remnants of keepers who remain at their posts even after death. The thought that these men continue their rounds provides a strange sense of continuity, as though the lighthouse is still being watched over by the very souls who once kept its light alive. In this interpretation, the footsteps are not warnings, but reassurances of presence that has never abandoned its duty. Still, the emotional weight of the phenomenon is undeniable. The sudden realization that you are not alone in the stairwell, that something is matching your every steps. There's a primal unease. The metal rings beneath your feet, the shadows stretch along the walls, and every instinct urges you to turn around. When you do, the silence feels heavier than before, as though the presence has simply paused, waiting for you to resume the climb. The phantom footsteps remain one of the lighthouse's most famous and enduring legends. They are as much a part of its identity as the beam that sweeps across the waves. Whether they are the lingering spirits of devoted keepers, the echoes of a storied past, or simply the tricks of an old structure amplified by human imagination, they continue to unsettle and fascinate all who hear them. For those who dare to climb the spiral staircase, the experience is never just physical. Each step carries with it the weight of history, the possibility of unseen company, and the question that lingers long after the climb is done: whose footsteps are following in the shadows of the tower? And why do they never reveal themselves? For more than a century, the lighthouse has been a steadfast guardian of the sea, its beam sweeping rhythmically across the dark horizon, guiding sailors away from jagged reefs and treacherous currents. The light is constant, predictable, and mechanical, its rotations and patterns carefully maintained by keepers and, later, modern technology. Yet despite its design, there have been numerous reports of the beacon behaving in ways that defy explanation, stuttering in its sweep, or shining in strange, unrecorded patterns. These episodes, fleeting yet undeniable, have given rise to one of the lighthouse's most enduring mysteries. The first documented account of the mysterious light dates back to the early 1900s. A sailor passing the coast reported that the beam flashed in an irregular sequence, 3 quick bursts, followed by a pause, something no lighthouse in the region was known to produce. At the time, lighthouse signals were carefully coded, each pattern corresponding to a particular location, so a deviation would not go unnoticed. The sailor insisted the pattern seemed intentional, almost like a message, though no one could decipher its meaning. The keepers on duty that night swore the light operated normally, yet the report was written into the maritime records. Over the decades, similar accounts emerged. Fishermen at sea described seeing the light dart across the water in sudden, jerky movements, as though it were no longer bound by the rotation of its mechanism. Locals living in the shadow of the tower spoke of nights when the beam seemed to linger unnaturally on certain spots, illuminating patches of sea or cliff face with deliberate focus before resuming its regular sweep. Some even claimed to see the light flicker in a rhythm resembling Morse code, as though someone or something was trying to communicate through the beacon. Skeptics point to natural explanations. Shifting fog, heavy storms, and atmospheric distortions can all create illusions, bending and refracting the light in ways that make it appear to move irregularly. Reflections off waves or mist can produce strange effects, creating the illusion of multiple beams where only one exists. Mechanical faults, though rare, have also been suggested, particularly in the early years when the lighthouse relied on clockwork mechanisms and oil lamps. Yet these rational explanations do not satisfy everyone, especially when so many accounts describe experiences that feel purposeful rather than random. For believers, the mysterious light is a manifestation of the spirits that linger within the lighthouse walls. They suggest that the beacon, once tended by the devoted hands of keepers who dedicated their lives to its glow, has become more than machinery. It is a vessel of memory, a bridge between the living and the dead. When the light strays from its usual pattern, it is not malfunctioning, it is reaching out, signaling, reminding those who see it that the souls of the past are still present. One of the most compelling stories comes from a stormy night in the 1920s. A small fishing vessel, caught in rough seas, was struggling to find its way back to harbor. The crew later swore that the lighthouse beam shifted from its usual rhythm and locked onto their boat, guiding them through the storm with a steadiness that felt intentional. They survived, returning with the tale that the light had followed them until they reached safety. Keepers at the lighthouse insisted the mechanism could not have done such a thing, but the fishermen held fast to their belief that something or someone within the tower had come to their aid. Another story, decades later, tells of a group of visitors watching the light from the cliffs. They claimed it flashed in a sequence too precise to be coincidence: short, long, repeated 3 times. To them, it was a signal, though its meaning remained unknown. Paranormal investigators who later visited the site suggested that the sequence resembled a form of code, though incomplete. Whether it was a deliberate message from a spirit or simply the product of atmospheric tricks, the memory of that night has lingered in the minds of those who witnessed it. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. Even with automated systems and precise engineering, reports of irregularities persist. Surveillance cameras have occasionally captured the light flickering unexpectedly, its pattern breaking for seconds at a time before resuming as though nothing happened. Maintenance crews find no faults, no loose wiring, no mechanical reason for the disruption. It is as if the light misbehaves only when it chooses to, leaving behind no trace of error. For those who stand beneath the lighthouse on quiet nights, watching the beam stretch across the sea, the possibility of the mysterious light feels undeniable. The air grows heavy, the waves crash below, and the steady rotation becomes hypnotic. Then, without warning, the beam falters, skipping a beat, stuttering in its sweep, or lingering too long in one direction. The heart races, the breath catches, and in that instant, it feels as though the lighthouse itself is alive, aware, and reaching out. Whether seen as malfunction, illusion, or communication, the mysterious light has become one of the most fascinating aspects of the lighthouse's lore. It blurs the line between the mechanical and the spiritual, raising the question of whether a structure so deeply tied to human devotion can carry echoes of its past. If keepers gave their lives to ensure the beacon never failed, perhaps they still linger within it, guiding, warning, or simply reminding the living that their watch is not yet over. The sea is vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but the lighthouse has always been a symbol of order and safety, a constant against chaos. When its light breaks that constancy, behaving in ways no mechanism should, it unsettles us because it suggests something more is at play. It suggests that the past is not silent, that the spirits tied to the tower still find ways to make themselves known. The mysterious light remains an enigma, a blend of natural wonder and supernatural possibility. Whether explained by science or by spirits, Its presence ensures that the lighthouse is more than just stone and steel. It is a place where history breathes, where light carries meaning beyond its practical purpose, and where the boundary between the living and the dead flickers with every sweep of the beam across the darkened sea. The lighthouse has always stood as a symbol of safety, its beam cutting through fog and darkness to guide sailors home. Yet, within its walls, not everyone finds comfort. Over the years, countless visitors have stepped into its spiral staircases and narrow chambers, only to leave with strange, unsettling accounts that suggest the lighthouse is not bound entirely to the world of the living. These are the tales of the vanishing visitors. Men and women who enter the tower and encounter moments that defy explanation. Moments where reality itself seems to falter. For some, the experience begins with an overwhelming sense of disorientation. They describe stepping into the entryway and feeling as though the air shifts around them, thick and heavy, as if the walls themselves are alive. Clocks seem unreliable inside. Time stretches, bends, and sometimes disappears altogether. A climb that should take only minutes can feel like an eternity, while in other cases, hours seem to vanish without notice. Visitors leave the tower unsure of how long they were inside, their memories foggy and fragmented, as though something or someone tampered with their sense of time. There are accounts of guests who entered with groups, only to realize midway through their visit that their companions were nowhere to be found. In the confusion, they sometimes encountered strangers within the stairwell, figures dressed in outdated clothing, silent and pale, who vanished when approached. At first, these visitors believed they had stumbled upon actors or reenactors, meant to add atmosphere to the historic site. Yet staff confirmed that no such performances had been arranged, and the descriptions of these strange figures always seemed to match people long dead. A keeper from the late 1800s, a woman in a tattered dress, a child holding a lantern. One particularly chilling story comes from a young couple who toured the lighthouse on a quiet afternoon. They recalled passing another pair of tourists climbing ahead of them, two men engaged in quiet conversation. The couple followed them up the stairs, keeping pace with the sound of their voices echoing above. But when they reached the landing, the staircase ahead was empty. The men had vanished entirely, with no other exits or rooms where they could have gone. The couple later learned that other guests had reported seeing those same two figures, always climbing, always talking, yet never arriving at the top. Another account tells of a family who entered the lighthouse together. The mother recalled seeing her young daughter wander only a few steps ahead, pausing to stare at a man in uniform standing by the railing. The man nodded politely, and when the mother called to her child, the girl turned back, confused, asking, "Why did he disappear?" The uniformed figure was gone, and no one else in the stairwell had seen him. The description of the man, tall, stern, and wearing a faded lighthouse keeper's coat, matched stories of Frederick Osborne, the tragic keeper, who died more than a century earlier. Time slips are another common theme among the vanishing visitor stories. Some guests describe entering the lighthouse at midday, only to emerge and find the sun lower in the sky than it should be. In more extreme cases, visitors claim they spent hours inside, exploring stairwells and rooms that staff insist no longer exist. A man once reported finding himself in a hallway lined with lanterns, the air thick with smoke from oil lamps. He believed it was part of the tour, until, in a blink, he stood once more at the base of the stairs, alone and shaken. When he described what he had seen, curators told him such rooms had been sealed off for decades. Paranormal investigators suggest that these experiences may be evidence of the lighthouse existing on a thin veil between the living and the dead. The structure, steeped in history and tragedy, could act as a kind of doorway, allowing brief crossings between worlds. The spirits of long-departed keepers and visitors may drift through the tower, visible for only a moment before vanishing. Others believe the lighthouse itself, a place where duty and death have intertwined for centuries, holds on to fragments of time, replaying echoes of the past for the living to witness. Skeptics, of course, offer alternative explanations. They point out that the spiral staircases and narrow chambers can easily cause disorientation, especially in dim light or crowded conditions. The echo of footsteps can create the illusion of unseen company, while fatigue and suggestion may distort a visitor's sense of time. Still, even the most skeptical cannot easily explain the consistent descriptions of vanished figures, many of whom match historical records unknown to those who reported seeing them. The most unsettling aspect of the vanishing visitor stories is the way they linger in the memory. Those who have experienced them often describe a sense of unease that follows them long after leaving the lighthouse. Dreams of shadowy stairwells, echoes of unseen voices, and flashes of pale figures haunt their nights. Some even refuse to return, unwilling to risk encountering whatever exists within those walls again. Yet others are drawn back, fascinated by the possibility that they brushed against something beyond ordinary life. To them, the vanishing visitors are proof that the lighthouse is more than stone and steel. It is a place where time folds in on itself, where history refuses to rest, and where the living and the dead walk side by side, even if only for fleeting moments. Standing in the tower, one cannot help but wonder what lies behind the whispers of disorientation, the flickers of vanished strangers, and the mysteries of lost time. Are these tricks of the mind, born from the isolation and atmosphere of the lighthouse? Or are they glimpses into another reality? One where the past bleeds into the present, and visitors cross paths with those who never truly left. The stories of the vanishing visitors endure, passed down by those who felt the cold weight of confusion, who saw figures vanish before their eyes, and who stepped out of the lighthouse forever changed. The tower may be a guide for sailors on the sea, but for those who enter its walls, it becomes something far more enigmatic, a place where reality itself can vanish, leaving only questions in its wake. Beside the towering lighthouse, with its endless vigil over the restless sea, sits the keeper dwelling, a Victorian-era home built to house the families of those who dedicated their lives to maintaining the beacon. At first glance, it appears picturesque, its gabled roof and shuttered windows standing as a charming reminder of the past. Yet, for all its quaint exterior, the dwelling has a reputation nearly as chilling as the lighthouse itself. Those who have stayed within its walls speak of ghostly encounters, unexplained sounds, and fleeting shadows that seem to linger just beyond sight. The keeper's dwelling was more than just a house. It was the heart of life for the lighthouse keepers and their families. Within its rooms, children played, while parents maintained routines dictated by the tides and the lights. Births, deaths, joys, and tragedies all unfolded under its roof, weaving a tapestry of human experience that has long since passed into memory. Yet, many believe those memories never truly left. Instead, they manifest in whispers, footsteps, and apparitions that continue to haunt the dwelling to this day. One of the most common reports from the house involves the unmistakable sound of children playing. Visitors describe hearing laughter echoing through empty halls, the patter of small feet running across the floorboards, and the creak of doors opening and closing as if little hands were at play. These sounds often occur in the late afternoon, when the light slants through the windows and fills the rooms with a golden glow. Guests have searched the house for the source, expecting to find hidden children, only to discover they are entirely alone. Theories abound about these spectral children. Some suggest they are the echoes of keepers' children who once lived in the dwelling, their joy and energy imprinted into the very walls. Others believe the sounds belong to the spirits of children lost at sea, drawn to the warmth and familiarity of the home. Whatever their origin, the playful noises are among the most enduring mysteries of the keeper's dwelling, simultaneously comforting and deeply unsettling. More disturbing, however, are the accounts of physical contact. Residents and overnight guests have spoken of feeling unseen hands brushing against them, as though someone were reaching out from the shadows. These touches range from gentle caresses along the arm to firm tugs on clothing. One guest reported waking in the night to the sensation of a small hand grasping her own, only to open her eyes and find the room empty. Another recalled feeling as though someone tapped his shoulder while he was reading, though no one else was present. Shadows also play a prominent role in the dwelling's lore. Many visitors claim to glimpse figures moving just out of the corner of their eyes, dark shapes darting across doorways or standing silently in the corners of rooms. When turned toward directly, the figures vanish, leaving only the weight of unease behind. A former caretaker described the recurring image of a tall shadow that would appear in the upstairs hallway, lingering at the edge of vision before dissolving into nothingness. Others have seen smaller shadows flitting through the rooms, reinforcing the idea that the dwelling is still home to unseen residents. One particularly chilling account tells of a family who stayed overnight in the dwelling as part of a historic program. In the middle of the night, the father awoke to the sound of children giggling in the hallway. Assuming his own children were awake, as he stood there, the laughter faded into silence, replaced by the faint creak of footsteps descending the stairs. The next morning, his children swore they never left their room. Over the years, paranormal investigators have been drawn to the keeper's dwelling, eager to explore its mysteries. Many have captured audio recordings of laughter, whispers, and unexplained knocks. Others have reported spikes in electromagnetic readings and sudden drops in temperature, particularly in the rooms where shadow figures are most often seen. Some investigators believe the dwelling serves as a focal point for energy, a place where the past and present collide, allowing spirits to manifest more freely than elsewhere. Skeptics, however, argue that the experiences can be explained through natural causes. Old houses creak and groan, producing sounds easily mistaken for footsteps or laughter. Drafts can cause doors to open or close, and shadows from passing cars or shifting light can create illusions of movement. As for the sensation of being touched, skeptics suggest it could be the result of heightened suggestion in a place known for its ghost stories. Yet even those who approach the dwelling with doubt often leave unsettled, unable to fully dismiss the weight of the experiences they've had within its walls. The haunted keeper's dwelling has become an inseparable part of the lighthouse's lore. It serves as a reminder that the lives of the keepers extended beyond their duties in the tower. Their families endured isolation, storms, and hardships, leaving emotional imprints that may linger still. Whether the sounds of children are echoes of joyful days gone by or the restless spirits of the departed, they remind visitors that the lighthouse's history is not just one of tragedy, but of life, vivid, fleeting, and deeply human. Today, those who step inside the keeper's dwelling often find themselves torn between fascination and unease. The rooms, filled with antique furnishings and the scent of salt air, seem frozen in time. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of shadow, carries the possibility of the supernatural. Guests may enter, expecting a glimpse into history, but many leave with stories that feel like encounters with the otherworldly. The dwelling stands as both a home and a haunting, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur. For some, the laughter of invisible children is a reminder of innocence preserved in eternity. For others, the shadowy figures and phantom touches are proof that the past refuses to rest quietly. Whatever one believes, the keeper's dwelling remains one of the most enigmatic and chilling chapters of the lighthouse's legacy, a place where history is alive, and perhaps so are its former inhabitants. Around the old lighthouse, where storms batter the cliffs and the sea roars endlessly against the rocks, a softer, more curious presence lingers. While many of the stories tied to the lighthouse are rooted in tragedy and sorrow, there exists a gentler legend, one that speaks of children who once lived within the keeper's dwelling and whose spirits remain nearby, known simply as the ghostly children. Their appearances are among the most frequently reported of the lighthouse's paranormal tales. They are not figures of menace, but of innocence, their laughter and playfulness echoing against the somber backdrop of the tower's history. Accounts of the ghostly children date back decades, often from visitors who had no knowledge of the dwelling's history. Guests describe seeing fleeting shapes darting across the grounds, small figures that vanish as quickly as they appear. Others speak of hearing laughter carried on the wind, high-pitched and joyful, even when no children are present. These sounds are most often reported in the evenings, just as the sun dips below the horizon and the sea glows in shades of violet and gold. The most common sightings place the children near the lighthouse itself, as though drawn to the beacon their fathers once tended. Some witnesses recall seeing 2 or 3 small figures chasing one another around the base of the tower. Their clothing, described as old-fashioned wool coats, dresses with hems just above the ankle, caps pulled low over their heads, suggests they belong to another century. When startled or approached, the children vanish into thin air, leaving only the echo of laughter behind. Stories from the keeper's dwelling reinforce these accounts. Families who have stayed overnight in the house have reported the distinct sound of children running down hallways, their footsteps light and hurried. Doors creak open on their own, as though pulled by unseen hands, and toys left in the rooms for decoration have been found moved from one spot to another by morning. Some parents even report their own children speaking of friends they played with during their stay, friends no one else could see. One particularly striking story involves a young boy visiting the lighthouse with his family. He told his parents about 2 children, a boy and a girl, who asked him to play outside with them. When pressed, he described their clothing and detailed attire no modern child would wear. His parents, unsettled, confirmed that no other children were visiting that day. Yet their son insisted, with the unwavering certainty only a child can hold, that his new friends were real. Historians suggest that these spirits could be the children of lighthouse keepers, who often lived in the isolated dwelling with their families. Life by the sea was difficult and lonely, but children brought moments of joy to the otherwise harsh existence. Sadly, records indicate that several children of keepers succumbed to illness or accidents during those years. Their presence in these stories may be a reflection of lives cut short, spirits lingering in the place they once called home. Not all accounts of the ghostly children are visual or auditory. Some visitors speak of a feeling and almost playful energy that fills certain rooms of the dwelling. Unlike the dread or heaviness often associated with other hauntings, this sensation is lighter, almost mischievous. Guests describe sudden bursts of cold air, accompanied by giggles, or the sense that someone small is darting just out of view. It is as though the children enjoy playing with those who enter, reminding the living that innocence, too, can leave an imprint on a place. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the presence of the ghostly children. During overnight sessions, audio recorders have captured faint laughter and whispered voices that seem to come from nowhere. Toys placed as trigger objects are sometimes found shifted or disturbed, despite locked doors and sealed rooms. On rare occasions, thermal cameras have captured small, human-shaped figures moving across the dwelling or grounds, though no living children were present at the time. For believers, this is evidence that the spirits of the children remain active, still playing as they once did. Skeptics argue that the reports can be explained by natural causes. The sound of wind rushing through cracks in the structure can resemble laughter, and old houses are prone to creaks and groans that mimic footsteps. Shadows and reflections may create illusions of small figures. Children, with their vivid imaginations, might invent playmates in such an atmospheric place, and parents may interpret these stories as something more. Yet even skeptics admit that the consistency of the reports, often from unrelated individuals, makes the tales difficult to dismiss entirely. The ghostly children add a unique dimension to the lore of the lighthouse. While many of its stories revolve around tragedy, violence, or sorrow, the presence of children suggests something different. Their laughter brings a gentler tone, a reminder that not all spirits are bound by suffering. Instead, these children seem tied to the joy and innocence they once knew, their energy replaying across the years like echoes of happiness that refuse to fade. For visitors, the idea of the ghostly children is both unsettling and strangely comforting. To hear laughter in an empty place, to glimpse fleeting figures in the twilight, it is a reminder that the lighthouse is not just a monument to solitude and duty, but also to family, to the lives once lived within its shadow. Even in death, those lives continue, their play echoing along the walls and across the grounds. The next time the wind carries the sound of distant giggles, or a shadow slips past the corner of the eye, those who walk the lighthouse grounds may wonder if they, too, have crossed paths with the ghostly children. They remain a gentle but persistent presence, their innocence preserved in echoes, their laughter a haunting melody that drifts among the waves and stones. In a place defined by tragedy and vigilance, their spirits bring a reminder of life's lighter moments, moments that, even in the afterlife, refuse to be forgotten. The lighthouse has long stood as a sentinel over the rugged coast of St. Simon's Island, its beam cutting through fog and darkness to warn mariners of the treacherous rocks below. But amid the safety it offers, the tower has also become the center of ghostly lore, where stories of the lost and the restless refuse to fade. Among the most enduring of these tales is that of the phantom sailor, a spirit said to wander the shore and lighthouse grounds. Bound by a tragedy at sea, he could not escape. According to local legend, the sailor was once part of a merchant crew navigating the unpredictable waters near St. Simon's. One stormy night, his ship was caught in a violent squall, its timbers groaning under the force of the waves. Despite his skill and courage, the vessel was dashed against the rocks, sending its crew into the icy waters. The sailor perished in the wreck, his body never recovered, leaving only sorrow and unanswered questions behind. Over the years, stories began to surface of a figure appearing near the lighthouse, always looking out toward the sea, as though searching for the ship that had been lost. Sightings of the phantom sailor are remarkably consistent. Witnesses describe a tall, shadowy figure, clad in what appears to be a damp, weathered coat, standing at the edge of the shore or along the lighthouse cliffs. His gaze is always fixed on the horizon, as if expecting the impossible, the return of a ship long gone. Some have reported seeing the faint outline of a tricorn hat, or the shimmer of a lantern swinging in the darkness, though, when approached, the figure vanishes into mist or shadow. The sailor's presence is not always visual. Many visitors have reported the sound of footsteps on the rocks and sand at night, slow and deliberate, matching the rhythm of a man pacing while lost in thought. Others have heard the distant clang of a bell or the creak of a mast, phantom echoes from the wreck that claimed his life. Even the air seems to shift when he is near, carrying a sudden chill and the briny temps of the sea, as if the spirit draws upon the environment itself to manifest. One notable encounter occurred in the 1920s, when a lighthouse keeper and his family were walking the grounds after dinner. The youngest son spotted a figure near the water's edge, peering out toward the open sea. He ran to tell his father, but by the time they reached the spot, the figure had disappeared. Only footprints in the wet sand remained, though they vanished within minutes, as though swallowed by the tide. The family, seasoned by years of life near the ocean, later swore that the footprints could belong to no ordinary visitor. They were larger, too deliberate, and too fleeting. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the phantom sailor for decades. Many have used cameras, audio equipment, and night vision devices in hopes of capturing evidence. Some claim to have recorded shadowy forms along the cliffs or faint silhouettes appearing near the water. Others report sudden drops in temperature or a feeling of heaviness that descends when the sailor is believed to be present. The evidence, while circumstantial, has reinforced the belief that the lighthouse is a nexus for spirits bound by tragic events. Skeptics offer more mundane explanations. The coast is often foggy, and moonlight or distant ships' lights can create illusions of figures on the shore. The wind through the trees and across the cliffs can produce eerie sounds that mimic footsteps or creaking rigging. Yet, even those inclined toward skepticism acknowledge the consistency of the sightings over decades. Witnesses from multiple generations, unrelated and unaware of prior accounts, often describe nearly identical encounters. This consistency lends the legend a weight that mere optical illusion cannot fully explain. Some historians suggest that the sailor's spirit remains because of unfinished business. Death at sea is sudden, violent, and isolating, leaving no closure. Without the solace of burial or ceremony, the soul lingers, tethered to the place nearest to the final moments of life. In this interpretation, the lighthouse itself becomes a sanctuary for the lost, a place where spirits come to watch, wait, and perhaps find peace. The phantom sailor's vigil may never end, for the sea continues to claim lives, and the horizon remains empty, offering no answers to the one who waits. Stories of encounters with the sailor often carry a sense of melancholy rather than fear. Those who have witnessed him speak of a quiet dignity in his posture, a yearning in his gaze. He does not threaten, does not chase. He merely observes, patient and eternal, bound to the shoreline where his life slipped away. Some local lore even suggests that the phantom sailor has helped living mariners, guiding small boats through treacherous waters with subtle movements or appearing to warn them of unseen dangers. In this way, the spirit of tragedy has become one of vigilance, mirroring the purpose of the lighthouse itself. The phantom sailor adds a profound depth to the lore of the lighthouse. While the beacon is a symbol of guidance and safety for the living, it also marks the presence of those lost to the sea. The figure is a reminder that the ocean, with all its beauty and mystery, is also a place of peril and unresolved grief. Visitors who witness him are often left contemplative, struck by the sense of continuity between past and present, between life and death. Even today, on quiet nights, when the waves crash against the cliffs and the wind carries the scent of salt and seaweed, the sailor's vigil continues. Some swear they see him, standing at the water's edge, lantern in hand, eyes fixed on the endless horizon. Others hear footsteps echoing across the rocks, or feel the sudden chill of a presence unseen. Whether legend, memory, or spirit, the phantom sailor endures a solitary figure caught between life and death. Between the sea he loved and the shore that now holds him, the lighthouse remains, steadfast and unwavering, its beam sweeping across waters both treacherous and familiar. But for those who linger in its shadow, there is more than guidance from the tower's light. There is the quiet, eternal presence of a sailor who waits, who remembers, and who continues to seek solace in a world that can no longer return what it has claimed. Perched high above the cliffs, the lighthouse has long been a guiding light for mariners, navigating the treacherous waters off the coast. Its beacon is a familiar, dependable sweep of light, a signal of safety for ships at sea. Yet, among the countless reports of haunting and strange occurrences tied to the tower, one phenomenon stands out as both subtle and mysterious. The lantern's glow. On certain nights, observers claim to see a faint light emanating from the lantern room, even when the official lamp is not in operation. This gentle illumination, sometimes flickering like a candle or casting a steady glow across the walls, has become one of the most enduring legends associated with the lighthouse. The story begins with those who worked near the tower, including caretakers, historians, and local residents. Several have reported noticing a soft, golden light shining from the lantern room long after the lighthouse has been officially darkened. At first, these observers assumed it must be a reflection from another source, a passing boat, a distant house, or moonlight bouncing off the glass panes. Yet time and again, the glow appeared in conditions where no natural or mechanical source could account for it. The light often flickers briefly and disappears as suddenly as it appears, leaving observers questioning their own perception. Visitors have also recounted seeing the lantern's glow on quiet nights, when the wind carries the sound of the surf and the lighthouse stands bathed in moonlight. Some have reported glimpsing the faint illumination through the tower's windows. It seems alive, purposeful, as though someone were inside tending the lantern, ensuring that the island's shores remain guarded. Hikers and sightseers on nearby cliffs have occasionally paused to watch the glow, mesmerized by its unexpected brilliance. And while the official beacon remains dormant, this mysterious light continues to cast its ethereal shimmer over the lighthouse interior, hinting at unseen activity within. The phenomenon is often attributed to the spirit of a keepermost, commonly Frederick Osborne, the lighthouse's tragic figure from the late 19th century. Osborne, who met his untimely end at the hands of his assistant, is said to have been a dedicated guardian of the light. Even in death, some believe, his devotion did not waver. The lantern's glow is therefore interpreted by many as his continued vigil, a subtle, spectral act of protection over the island, ensuring that the sea remains safe for those who traverse it. Those who claim to have witnessed the glow describe it in a variety of ways. Some see a faint, steady illumination, soft and comforting, like a distant candle burning in the dark. Others report that the light flickers and dances, moving as though responding to the observer's presence or perhaps mimicking the natural rhythm of the waves below. On rare occasions, the glow is accompanied by a sense of warmth or a sudden shift in the atmosphere, a subtle reminder that something unseen resides within the tower. The effect is often described as calming, even reassuring, though undeniably eerie. One particular story comes from a group of nighttime hikers who paused near the base of the lighthouse to rest. As they looked up, they noticed a soft glow in the lantern room, steady yet faint. One member of the group, familiar with the lighthouse's history, suggested it could be the lantern's glow phenomenon, often linked to Osborne. Intrigued, they waited for several minutes, observing the light flicker and shift. When one of them later climbed the tower during daylight hours, they confirmed that the lamp was completely deactivated, and no modern equipment could account for the glow they had witnessed the previous night. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to the lantern's glow. Many have set up cameras, thermometers, and light meters in the lantern room in an attempt to document the phenomenon. Some claim to have captured faint bursts of illumination on film, sometimes appearing in the middle of the night with no discernible source. Others report unexplained fluctuations in temperature or electromagnetic fields accompanying the glow, as though the spirit of the keeper interacts subtly with the environment. While these occurrences cannot be definitively verified, they add to the mystery and allure of the phenomenon, reinforcing its reputation as one of the lighthouse's most enigmatic features. Skeptics argue that the glow can often be explained by natural factors, reflections from distant lights, atmospheric distortions, or even residual light from maintenance equipment. Yet witnesses frequently insist that the illumination appears in conditions where such explanations seem impossible. The glow's persistence and consistency over decades, coupled with its association with the tower's history, give it a weight beyond simple coincidence or optical illusion. In local folklore, the lantern's glow serves as a symbol of vigilance, devotion, and protection. It is said that the spirit who produces the light watches over the surrounding waters, guiding ships even when the official beacon rests. Fishermen, sailors, and visitors alike tell stories of glimpsing the glow before storms, or during foggy nights, as though the spectral keeper senses danger and responds with his faint, yet steadfast, illumination. In this way, the light becomes more than a visual phenomenon, represents continuity between the living and the dead, between duty and the afterlife. The glow also serves as a poignant reminder of the humanity tied to the lighthouse. Every keeper who ever lived within its walls dedicated their life to the safety of others, often at great personal cost. The lantern's glow is a testament to that devotion, a lingering presence that connects the past with the present. Those who see it often describe a sense of calm and respect, a feeling that the spirit within the tower continues to watch, guide, and protect. Even today, when the lighthouse has long since automated and technology has replaced many human duties, the lantern's glow continues to capture imaginations. For those who pause on moonlit nights to look up at the lantern room, it remains a quiet, spectral reminder that some guardians never abandoned their post. The light may be faint, brief, and unexplainable, but it endures a subtle, haunting presence, steadfast in its eternal watch over the island and the restless waters beyond. As darkness falls over the Lighthouse Museum, the halls and rooms that once housed the daily life of keepers take on an entirely different atmosphere. By day, the space is alive with visitors and the hum of activity. But after closing, it becomes quiet and still, so still that every creak of the wooden floor and whisper of the wind seems amplified. It is during these late hours that staff have repeatedly reported hearing something unusual. Disembodied voices, soft and indistinct, echoing through the empty corridors. The voices are subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A faint murmur, a soft cadence of speech, sometimes rising into laughter or sighs, other times falling back into silence. Staff have described the sounds as resembling conversations, as if former keepers were engaged in daily tasks or exchanging words long forgotten. Yet when anyone attempts to locate the source, the corridors are empty, the rooms vacant, and the museum remains locked and secured. The voices seem to exist independently of the physical world, drifting through walls and across floors with an eerie autonomy. One of the earliest recorded reports came from a night security guard who had been working alone in the late 1970s. As he patrolled the exhibits, he began to hear the faint sound of two men conversing just around the corner. The words were too low to decipher clearly, but the tone suggested routine discussion, perhaps about tasks or maintenance. When he hurried to investigate, the hallway was empty, and the sound ceased. Shaken but skeptical, he checked the museum's logbooks and confirmed that no other personnel were in the building. Yet the memory of voices lingering in empty corridors stayed with him for years. Subsequent reports have revealed a consistent pattern. The voices are most often heard in areas connected to the keeper's daily life. The lantern room, the old office, and the adjacent living quarters, now preserved as museum exhibits. Some staff claim to hear footsteps accompanying the speech, as though someone were walking while talking. Others report hearing the sound of doors opening and closing, cups being set down, or papers shuffled, dull, entirely untraceable. In every instance, those experiencing the phenomenon insist the museum was completely empty aside from themselves. Visitors who tour the museum during the day occasionally report subtle hints of this presence. Some speak of faint echoes that seem out of place, a tone of voice lingering after a guide has spoken, or a feeling of being observed in areas where no one else is standing. Although they may not hear the full conversations, the effect is unsettling, a faint, ghostly residue of the voices that staff hear at night. It is as if the past permeates the walls, leaving impressions of the people who once lived and worked there. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the Lighthouse Museum specifically to explore these disembodied voices. Using audio recorders, some have captured low murmurs, sighs, or whispered words when no one is present. Others report electromagnetic fluctuations coinciding with the sounds, suggesting a tangible but invisible presence. One investigator described a recording session where the captured audio included the clear sound of multiple voices, distinct yet indecipherable, as if the keepers were performing their nightly routines once again. Historians and enthusiasts often speculate on the origin of these voices. Most agree they likely belong to the spirits of former lighthouse keepers, men who devoted their lives to maintaining the beacon and ensuring the safety of sailors. For decades, these men lived in isolation, their days dominated by duty and vigilance. Some may have died within the lighthouse or nearby, their routines ingrained so deeply that echoes of their voices remain. The disembodied speech is interpreted by many as the keeper's way of replaying moments from their lives, remnants of conversations and tasks that once defined their existence. Others suggest the voices could be tied to emotional or energetic impressions left in the environment. Buildings with prolonged human occupancy often retain traces of sound, movement, and vibration, a phenomenon sometimes described as stone tape theory. In this view, the walls and floors of the Lighthouse Museum act as a vessel, replaying fragments of past interactions. Yet, even proponents of this theory admit that the specificity of the voices, their timing, location, and perceived intent feels more personal and deliberate than simple echoes of the past. Staff who have worked long-term in the museum often develop strategies to cope with the presence. Some speak softly to the voices as a form of acknowledgement, while others leave the building immediately when the sounds grow too persistent. Many describe an underlying feeling accompanying the voices, a sense of nostalgia or solemnity, rather than outright fear. It is as though the spirits are merely continuing their lives in subtle, respectful ways, not seeking to frighten, but to exist quietly alongside the living. The disembodied voices serve as a reminder of the lighthouse's human history. Beyond the mechanical operations, the storms, and the shipwrecks, it was the keepers themselves who made the tower function, a network of lives lived in dedication, solitude, and quiet heroism. The voices echo these lives, preserving memories that might otherwise have been lost. For those who hear them, the experience is haunting, yet intimate, a fleeting connection to individuals who once devoted themselves to a duty as enduring as the lighthouse itself. Whether one believes the phenomenon to be paranormal or psychological, the effect is undeniable. Late at night, when the museum stands empty and the wind whips across the cliffs, the sound of whispered conversation carries a weight that is both eerie and humanizing. The disembodied voices are more than ghost stories. They are living remnants of a past that continues to speak. A reminder that the lighthouse is not merely stone and glass, but a vessel for memory, vigilance, and the quiet persistence of those who once kept the light burning. The lighthouse stands as a solitary sentinel against the relentless tides, its tower rising high above jagged cliffs and crashing waves. By day, visitors walk the grounds with a sense of awe, admiring the architecture and the sweeping views of the sea. But as the sun dips and shadows stretch across the landscape, a different experience emerges, one marked not by sight, but by an unshakable feeling, the sense of an unseen presence. Many who have walked the lighthouse grounds after hours, alone or in small groups, report an almost tangible awareness that they are being watched, even when no one else is around. The sensation is most commonly reported near the base of the tower, where the thick stone walls have absorbed generations of human activity. The air itself seems to carry a weight, heavy with history and memory. Visitors describe a sudden chill, a subtle pressure on their skin, or the faint brush of something just beyond perception. The feeling is disorienting, as if the very atmosphere is aware of their presence and responding to their movements. Many admit to turning repeatedly, scanning the empty grounds, only to find no one there. The effect is unsettling, yet compelling, as though the unseen observers are invisible, yet undeniably present. Accounts of this phenomenon stretch back decades. A lighthouse caretaker in the early 1900s described walking the grounds alone after a long day and feeling eyes upon me, unseen and watchful. He wrote in his journal of the sensation following him from the stairwell to the door, an inexplicable awareness that he was not entirely alone. In later years, visitors and staff alike reported similar experiences, often during quiet moments when the wind and waves subsided and the world seemed still. The recurrence of these stories suggests a continuity, as though something within the lighthouse grounds is consistently vigilant. Some who have felt the unseen presence report physical sensations accompanying the awareness. A sudden drop in temperature is common, often localized to a particular spot on the grounds. Others describe the hair standing on their neck, a pressure in the chest, or the prickling of skin as though 1,000 eyes follow their every movement. These subtle, physiological responses are enough to convince many that the sensation is more than imagination. While the mind can be fooled by isolation and expectation, the consistency of the reports suggests a deeper mystery at play. One memorable encounter comes from a historian documenting the lighthouse for a local archive. He recounted standing at the base of the tower, taking photographs of the structure against the setting sun. Though the grounds were empty, he suddenly felt the unmistakable weight of someone watching him. The hairs on his arms rose, and a cold draft swept across the area where the air should have been still. When he reviewed the photographs later, he noticed faint anomalies in the image's shadowy forms at the edges of the frames, just beyond where his camera was focused. Whether evidence of the unseen presence or the play of light and shadow, the moment left him profoundly unsettled. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to the lighthouse, intrigued by the reports of unseen observers. Many use cameras, audio equipment, and thermal imaging to detect anomalies. And while conclusive evidence is rare, subtle clues often emerge. Cold spots, electromagnetic fluctuations, and faint sounds sometimes accompany the sensation of being watched, suggesting that the unseen presence is more than psychological. Some investigators propose that the lighthouse grounds act as a focal point for residual energy, a place where the spirits of past keepers and visitors remain attuned to those who walk among them. The phenomenon of the unseen presence is often interpreted through the lens of history. The lighthouse has stood for centuries, witnessing shipwrecks, storms, and countless human lives passing through its shadow. Keepers devoted themselves to the tower, living in isolation and maintaining vigilance over the waters below. Tragedies and triumphs alike unfolded within its walls, leaving emotional and psychological imprints. Many believe the unseen presence is the manifestation of these past lives, a subtle awareness lingering, a ghostly watchfulness rooted in devotion, sorrow, and memory. Even those with no interest in the paranormal can be affected. Hikers and tourists often remark on the inexplicable feeling of being observed, despite seeing no living soul. It is a subtle tension, a pull that suggests something exists just beyond the reach of sight. In some cases, the sensation is brief, a few steps along a path or a glance across the lawn. In others, it persists for minutes or even hours, an almost oppressive awareness that is difficult to ignore. For many, this presence is the defining element of a visit to the lighthouse grounds, leaving a lasting impression that lingers long after departure. Skeptics attribute the sensation to environmental and psychological factors. The isolated location, the crashing waves, and the winds through the cliffs can all create auditory and sensory illusions. The human mind is adept at detecting patterns, even where none exists, and in dim light or shadow. Peripheral vision can play tricks. Yet, while these explanations may account for some experiences, they fail to fully explain the consistency, intensity, and emotional weight reported by so many visitors over decades. The unseen presence remains an enigma, straddling the boundary between perception and something beyond. Those who have felt it often describe a mixture of fear, awe, and respect. Unlike more aggressive hauntings, the unseen presence is rarely threatening. It is watchful, patient, and quiet, a reminder that the lighthouse is not merely a building, but a repository of memory, vigilance, and human experience. It embodies the notion that some places retain echoes of their past, subtle and invisible, yet impossible to ignore for those sensitive to their energy. In the end, the lighthouse stands as a beacon in more ways than one. It guides ships to safety, preserves the memory of those who kept it, and quietly observes those who traverse its grounds. The unseen presence is a silent testament to its history, an enduring connection between past and present, living and departed. For anyone who has walked the cliffs alone, felt the weight of unseen eyes, or sensed the subtle awareness in the air, the lighthouse is more than a tower of stone. It is a place where history watches, remembers, and waits. The lighthouse stands tall against the relentless backdrop of the Atlantic, its towering presence a symbol of guidance and vigilance. Yet, for visitors who tread the winding paths and climb its spiral staircases, there exists a quieter, subtler mystery, one that leaves no immediate trace but is felt deeply by those who encounter it. Personal items, objects carried carefully in pockets or backpacks, often vanish inexplicably within the grounds of the lighthouse, only to reappear days or even weeks later in places where they could not possibly have been moved by human hands. These are the accounts of the mysterious disappearances, and their stories are as varied as they are unsettling. For many visitors, the experience begins innocuously. A camera left on a bench to capture the sun's last rays disappears the moment the person turns away. A scarf, carefully wrapped around a neck on a chilly day, vanishes while ascending the tower. Keys, wallets, and even small trinkets have been reported missing, seemingly evaporating into thin air. Initially, those affected suspect their own forgetfulness, retracing steps in the hope of locating their belongings. Yet, time and again, the items are found days later, often in unexpected locations, atop the lantern room railing, tucked behind a heavy exhibit case, or resting on a windowsill where no visitor could have placed them. One particularly memorable case involves a group of history enthusiasts visiting the Lighthouse Museum. A small antique compass, an object of great personal value, was left on a display table during a guided tour. Moments later, it was gone, and thorough searches yielded no results. Distraught, the group continued their tour, resigning themselves to the loss. Several days later, however, the compass was discovered on the floor of the lighthouse basement near old maintenance equipment that had been unused for decades. The group was mystified. The path between the display table and the basement was locked, and no staff or visitor reported moving the object. For those who were there, the incident became a lasting, eerie memory of the lighthouse's hidden activity. Stories of mysterious disappearances are not limited to small objects. Larger items, jackets, cameras, notebooks have similarly vanished, often accompanied by sensations of unease. Visitors sometimes report the feeling of being observed or followed as the item disappears, as if unseen eyes are testing their attention. Others describe a fleeting shadow in peripheral vision or the sense of a presence brushing past. While some accounts evoke fear, others suggest mischief, as though the spirits inhabiting the lighthouse are playful, interacting gently with the living rather than seeking to harm them. Investigators of the paranormal have attempted to document these occurrences, setting cameras and motion sensors throughout the lighthouse grounds. While conclusive evidence is rare, some have captured faint movements in areas where items later disappeared, or sudden shifts in the placement of objects in photographs that cannot be explained. Audio recordings sometimes reveal subtle noises, the soft scrape of an object being moved, a whisper, or the faint echo of footsteps along staircases long emptied. Although skeptics argue that human error or simple oversight could account for many of the incidents, the recurring nature and unusual timing of these disappearances leave even the most rational observers questioning. Theories abound regarding the cause of the mysterious disappearances. Many believe that playful spirits keepers, long gone, or even the children who once lived in the adjacent dwelling are responsible. In life, these figures inhabited the tower and its grounds, surrounded by the routines of maritime life and the isolation of coastal living. In death, they may linger, subtly interacting with the belongings of visitors as a way of making their presence known. Such explanations suggest that the lighthouse, while a beacon for sailors, also serves as a stage for the living to glimpse remnants of its human history. Others interpret the phenomenon symbolically. Objects that disappear and later reappear may serve as reminders for visitors to pay closer attention to the history surrounding them. Perhaps the spirits are prompting reflection, a gentle insistence that the stories of keepers, shipwrecks, and island life are not to be overlooked. In this view, the lighthouse becomes a dynamic repository of memory, where the ordinary and the supernatural intersect in ways that encourage mindfulness and respect. Local lore often emphasizes this perspective. Guides and longtime residents tell visitors that the lighthouse is not merely a static structure, but a living chronicle. Objects that vanish are interpreted as echoes of past events, subtle nudges from the invisible occupants who remain tied to the tower. A misplaced scarf or wandering notebook is not theft or error, it is interaction, a whisper from history asserting its presence. Many who have recovered their missing items report a newfound awareness, a sense of connection to the lives and routines that unfolded within the lighthouse for generations. The mysterious disappearances, while unnerving, rarely evoke anger or fear for long. Instead, they inspire curiosity and wonder. Visitors recount stories of their vanished possessions with a mixture of disbelief and delight, sharing experiences with friends and fellow guests. Some begin to treat their belongings with playful caution, leaving items intentionally exposed to see what might happen, while others quietly accept the possibility that the lighthouse's unseen residents are at work, gently reminding them that they are part of a space imbued with memory and spirit. Even today, the lighthouse stands as a beacon of both safety and mystery. Its light continues to sweep across the waters, guiding mariners, while the grounds remain a theater for subtle, unexplained activity. The phenomenon of the mysterious disappearances reminds those who walk its paths that history is not merely recorded in books or plaques but lives in the walls, the staircases, and the objects left behind. Belongings may vanish, but they invariably return, reinforcing the idea that the lighthouse is a place where past and present meet, where unseen eyes watch, and where small acts of mischief or memory persist beyond the constraints of time. Visitors leave the lighthouse with stories of vanished keys, misplaced cameras, and wandering scarves, each tale adding to the rich tapestry of legend. Whether attributed to playful spirits, echoes of history, or the inexplicable mysteries of a place steeped in centuries of human experience, the disappearances remain an enduring feature of the lighthouse's lore. They are a reminder that even in the most familiar spaces, unseen forces may be at work, gently guiding attention, preserving memory, and keeping the past ever present. The St. Simon's Island Lighthouse has long been a beacon of guidance for sailors navigating the unpredictable waters off the Georgia coast. Its bright light cuts through fog, storms, and the darkness of night, offering reassurance to those at sea. Yet for visitors on the island itself, the lighthouse sometimes presents a different kind of phenomenon, unsettling stillness that descends upon the grounds, a silence so profound it seems unnatural. This eerie quiet has become one of the lighthouse's most chilling signatures, a phenomenon that has left many feeling as though time itself has paused. Visitors often describe the first moments of this silence as subtle, almost imperceptible. The usual sounds of seagulls, the rhythmic crash of waves, and the rustle of the wind through the trees begin to fade, replaced by a hush that is both heavy and disorienting. The sudden absence of sound creates an immediate sense of awareness, heightening the smallest noises, footsteps on the wooden floors, the creak of the spiral staircase, or even the soft whisper of someone speaking. In the absence of natural background noise, these minor sounds can seem amplified, echoing unnervingly through the tower and the surrounding grounds. One visitor recounted approaching the lighthouse on a cloudy afternoon, expecting the typical ambiance of a bustling historical site. As she drew near, however, she noticed a stark stillness. The waves along the shore fell silent, and even the birds overhead seemed to have vanished. The effect was so pronounced that she initially thought her own senses were deceiving her. Then, abruptly, a loud thud echoed from the top of the lighthouse tower, followed by the faint scrape of metal. Her heart raced as she realized the noises had no apparent source, and the oppressive silence returned immediately after, amplifying her unease. This eerie quiet is often broken by sudden, unexplained sounds. Tourists have reported hearing footsteps on the spiral staircase when no one else is present, doors creaking open and closed on their own, and distant, indiscernible murmurs that seem to drift through the air. The contrast between absolute silence and these intermittent noises creates an almost cinematic tension, as if the lighthouse itself is alive, observing and interacting with those who enter. The unpredictability of these sounds makes the experience all the more unsettling, leaving visitors unsure of what is real and what may be a trick of the mind. Staff members working late at the lighthouse have also experienced this phenomenon. Many describe walking through empty corridors during closing hours, only to find the silence suddenly pierced by a soft tapping or a scraping sound, which disappears just as quickly as it appeared. The effect is unnerving because it occurs without warning and without any visible source, often in areas where structural or environmental explanations seem unlikely. Some longtime staff members have grown accustomed to the pattern, recognizing it as part of the lighthouse's enigmatic presence. Yet even they admit the sensation is impossible to ignore. Paranormal researchers visiting the site have noted the eerie silence as a precursor to other reported phenomena. Temperature drops, sudden gusts of wind within the tower, and fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures often accompany the quiet, suggesting that the silence itself may act as a harbinger or amplifier of supernatural activity. Witnesses report a tangible change in atmosphere, a weight in the air that signals the presence of something unseen, something tied to the lighthouse's long and sometimes tragic history. Some theorize that this silence may be a form of residual energy, a lingering echo of past events and lives connected to the lighthouse. Generations of keepers have lived and worked on the grounds, their routines and duties, leaving an imprint that continues to manifest in subtle, unsettling ways. Shipwrecks, storms, and personal tragedies over the decades may have contributed to this energy, creating pockets of quiet where the living are acutely aware of the past, pressing in upon the present. Visitors who experience the eerie silence often emerge with a mix of awe and discomfort. The absence of sound sharpens the senses, forcing awareness of every shadow, every distant noise, and every sensation of being observed. It is a reminder that the lighthouse is more than a historical monument or a navigational aid. It is a place where history, memory, and perhaps the supernatural converge. The silence is a presence in itself, demanding attention, commanding respect, and creating an atmosphere in which the ordinary laws of perception seem to bend. For those who walk the grounds during these moments, the lighthouse becomes both majestic and intimidating. The sudden hush, followed by inexplicable noises, leaves a lasting impression, one that lingers long after visitors have descended the spiral staircase or stepped away from the tower. The eerie silence of St. Simon's Island Lighthouse is not just the absence of sound, it is an active, palpable force, a haunting reminder of the depth of history contained within the walls, and of the mysterious, sometimes unsettling legacy that continues to watch over the island. The lighthouse on St. Simon's Island is famed for its storied history and spectral legends, but the mysteries of the area extend far beyond the tower itself. The grounds surrounding the lighthouse, stretching from the rugged cliffs to the forested edges of the island, are steeped in an unsettling energy that visitors often describe as palpable. While the beacon guides ships to safety, the grounds hold stories of restless spirits, lingering memories, and strange occurrences that defy logical explanation. Many visitors report feeling sudden, unexplained cold drafts as they walk along the paths leading to the lighthouse. These gusts of wind appear in moments of calm, when no natural cause seems possible. Some describe them as brief chills, brushing against the neck or hands, while others say the temperature drops sharply in localized pockets, as if invisible presences are moving through the air. The effect is often accompanied by an acute sense of unease, a whispering awareness that the grounds are being observed by something unseen. Footsteps on the sand are another commonly reported phenomenon. Individuals strolling along the shoreline or on the paths near the lighthouse occasionally hear the unmistakable crunch of sand beneath boots or shoes. When they pause and look behind them, the beach appears deserted, the dunes empty. The sounds are deliberate and measured, echoing the cadence of someone walking with purpose. Some who have encountered these phantom footsteps describe them as slow and steady, like a keeper on patrol, while others say they vary in pace, as if multiple entities are moving across the grounds unseen. Shadows are perhaps the most visually striking of these occurrences. Visitors frequently report fleeting movements in the corner of their eyes, shapes darting between the trees or along the edges of the lighthouse's base. Often, when attention is focused directly on the movement, the shadows vanish, leaving nothing behind but the rustle of leaves or the occasional sway of branches in the wind. These glimpses, brief as they are, leave a lasting impression, a sense that the island itself is inhabited by watchful eyes, spirits who move just beyond perception. Local lore suggests that these manifestations are tied to the history of St. Simon's Island. The area around the lighthouse has been witness to centuries of human activity, including shipwrecks, military encampments, and the lives of countless keepers and their families. Tragedy and loss are woven into the very soil, leaving traces of memory and energy that some believe persist long after death. The sudden drafts, unseen footsteps, and shifting shadows are interpreted as evidence of these lingering presences. Spirits connected to both the land and the lighthouse, continuing their routines or wandering in restless cycles. One particularly compelling account comes from a family visiting the lighthouse grounds on a warm summer evening. As they walked along a path shaded by oak trees, a sudden chill enveloped them, causing goosebumps to rise across their skin. The youngest child paused, listening intently, and claimed to hear soft footsteps behind them. They turned, but no one was there. Moments later, the child pointed toward the tree line, where a shadow appeared to move swiftly between two oaks before vanishing entirely. The parents, skeptical at first, felt an inexplicable tension in the air, a sensation that lingered long after the family left the island. Paranormal researchers have often visited the lighthouse grounds to document these experiences, using thermal cameras, audio equipment, and motion sensors. Investigators have occasionally captured anomalies, brief temperature drops, faint forms moving across camera frames, or sounds that do not correspond to any identifiable source. while skeptics argue that these phenomena may be caused by natural elements, shifting winds, animals, or the acoustic properties of the landscape. Consistency of reports over decades suggests that something more elusive may be at play. The eerie drafts, phantom footsteps, and fleeting shadows appear too frequently and with too much pattern to be dismissed entirely. The spirits that inhabit the grounds are thought to vary in demeanor. Some are described as watchful and solemn, like former keepers, ensuring the lighthouse's safety even in death. Others seem playful, moving silently and leaving small, fleeting impressions, reminiscent of children laughing and darting between trees. In this sense, the lighthouse grounds become a living, breathing space of memory and interaction, where the past and present overlap, and the invisible remains subtly entwined with the lives of the living. Visitors who experience these phenomena often report a range of emotions. Fear is common, particularly when shadows move unexpectedly or when footsteps echo in the silence. But alongside fear, many feel awe, curiosity, and even a sense of connection to history. The haunted grounds serve as a reminder that the lighthouse is not an isolated structure. It is part of a larger landscape shaped by human lives, tragedies, and enduring vigilance. Walking the grounds, one may feel the invisible presence of those who came before, their routines and memories imprinted upon the earth itself. For those who return frequently to the lighthouse, the haunted grounds become a place of reflection. The cold drafts, footsteps, and shadows are not merely disturbances, they are the whispers of history, the echoes of lives lived in service to the sea and the island. Each sensation reinforces the idea that the lighthouse and its surroundings are part of a continuum, a bridge between the living and those who remain tied to the land through memory, tragedy, and devotion. Even today, when technology and modern navigation systems have replaced much of the human labor once required to maintain the lighthouse, the grounds retain their mysteries. Visitors who walk the paths at dusk or on quiet mornings often describe the same sensations reported for generations. The chill of unseen drafts, the rhythmic crunch of phantom footsteps, and shadows moving just beyond sight. These experiences remind all who tread the area that the lighthouse is more than stone and metal. It is a place alive with the presence of the past, and the spirits of St. Simon's Island are not confined to its tower alone. The haunted grounds stand as a testament to the island's layered history, where every rustling leaf and shifting shadow may carry the imprint of those who have passed. To walk among the cliffs, sand, and trees is to step into a space where memory lingers, where the past observes the present, and where the supernatural quietly intertwines with the natural. The lighthouse guides ships, but its grounds guide the imagination, drawing visitors into a world where the line between the living and the departed is thin and permeable. The lighthouse stands as a sentinel over St. Simon's Island, its beams sweeping faithfully across the treacherous waters, guiding ships away from the jagged rocks below. For centuries, it has served as a guardian, a beacon of hope for sailors, and a symbol of steadfast vigilance. Yet among the many tales woven into its history, none are as haunting or as mysterious as the legend of the Lightkeeper's Warning. The story begins in the late 1800s, during a period when the lighthouse was tended by men whose lives were consumed by duty. Keepers often lived in isolation, cut off from the mainland for weeks at a time, their days dictated by the rotation of the light and the whims of the sea. One such keeper, whose name has been lost to time, is said to have had an uncanny sense of foresight. Colleagues recall that he would often speak of spirits, of lingering presences on the island, and of a warning he felt compelled to leave behind for those who would follow in his footsteps. According to legend, the lightkeeper sensed his own impending death. Some say it was a premonition. Others believe he had discovered something within the lighthouse, a secret or a presence that made him wary. In anticipation, he is said to have etched a warning directly into the walls of the lighthouse, a message intended for future keepers and visitors, urging them to respect the spirits that inhabit the island. The warning was never publicly displayed, hidden instead in a place known only to him, and over time its exact location became shrouded in mystery. Those who claim to have found the warning describe it as both chilling and solemn. Some speak of faint scratches in the stone or wood, barely visible under layers of paint and age, forming words that seem to appear and disappear depending on the light. Others report symbols, enigmatic markings that convey a sense of caution without revealing a clear meaning. The message is said to carry an atmosphere of foreboding, an energy that unsettles even the most skeptical visitor. People who have encountered it often describe an immediate drop in temperature, a feeling of being observed, or the subtle movement of shadows along the walls, as if the lighthouse itself is watching. One notable account comes from a historian who had spent years studying the lighthouse. During a late evening visit, he wandered the spiral staircase alone, flashlight in hand, when he noticed faint etchings on the wall near a rarely accessed landing. As he bent closer to examine them, the air around him grew inexplicably cold, and the faintest whisper of movement brushed past his ears. The etchings, barely discernible, appeared to form words warning of unseen presences and the need for respect and caution. The historian felt an overwhelming sense of urgency, as though the message was not merely informational but alive, carrying a weight far beyond the physical marks on the wall. Visitors have reported similar experiences, often describing the warning as a silent communication rather than a written message alone. Some feel a subtle pressure, like the weight of expectation, urging them to proceed carefully through the lighthouse. Others perceive fleeting figures out of the corner of their eyes, shadows that vanish the moment they are directly observed, even when the markings themselves are not found. People report a pervasive sense of caution in certain areas of the tower, a lingering presence that seems to reinforce the lightkeeper's admonition. The lightkeeper's warning is often interpreted as a plea for respect toward the island's spirits. Over the years, the lighthouse and its surrounding grounds have become associated with numerous haunting, unexplained lights, phantom footsteps, and disembodied voices among them. The message etched into the walls is thought to be a reminder that the past is never entirely gone, and that the souls who remain on the island are to be acknowledged, not disturbed. Many believe the warning is less about specific danger and more about maintaining harmony with the unseen occupants, honoring both history and the lingering presence of those who once walked the lighthouse. Paranormal researchers and historians alike have attempted to locate the warning using ultraviolet light, magnifying glasses, and careful examination of the walls and woodwork. Some claim partial success, finding faint scratches or discolorations in areas long neglected, though the full message remains elusive. Skeptics argue that these marks could be the result of natural aging, maintenance work, or the effects of weather. Yet those who have experienced the associated phenomena, the chills, whispers, and fleeting shadows, remain convinced that the warning is real and potent. What makes the Lightkeeper's warning particularly compelling is its enduring influence. Even today, visitors to the lighthouse report a sense of foreboding when exploring its upper levels or isolated corners. The atmosphere shifts subtly, a mixture of reverence and unease, reminding all who enter that this is not just a historical structure, but a place where past and present intersect. The lighthouse, its grounds, and its hidden messages serve as a living testament to the lives of the keepers and the spirits who linger long after them. In this way, the warning transcends its physical form. It is a call to mindfulness, an insistence that those who enter the lighthouse remember the dedication, sacrifice, and presence of those who came before. It is also a reminder that some aspects of history and the supernatural remain beyond full comprehension. The lighthouse continues to function as a beacon for ships, but the Lightkeeper's warning ensures that it also serves as a cautionary symbol for the living, a subtle, haunting reminder that respect for the past and for the spirits that inhabit it is not optional. For anyone walking the spiral stairs or exploring the grounds alone, the lighthouse is more than stone and glass. It is a vessel of memory, vigilance, and spectral guardianship. The Lightkeeper's warning persists in whispers, shadows, and faint etchings, waiting for those who will heed its caution. Whether hidden in plain sight or lingering invisibly in the air, it remains a powerful testament to the enduring connection between the living and the unseen. between duty and devotion, and between history and the mysteries that continue to inhabit St. Simon's Island. The waters surrounding St. Simon's Island have long been treacherous, a place where shoals, storms, and sudden fogs have claimed countless vessels over the centuries. Mariners have always looked to the lighthouse as a guiding light, a beacon of safety in the dark expanse of the Atlantic. Yet, even with the lighthouse's steady illumination, sailors report sightings of a vessel unlike any other, a phantom ship, appearing suddenly on fog-laden nights, its form shimmering in the mist before vanishing without a trace. These sightings have persisted for generations. Accounts often begin with the fog rolling in, thick and heavy, blanketing the shoreline and casting a muted gray over the sea. Visibility drops to mere feet, and the air is damp and still. Amid this eerie silence, the shape of a ship emerges, usually appearing at a distance on the horizon. It is not a modern vessel, but a silhouette reminiscent of older ships' wooden hulls, billowing sails, and the faintest flicker of lanterns along its deck. The phantom ship moves gracefully across the water, seemingly unaffected by the waves or wind, its presence both captivating and chilling. Those who have witnessed the ship describe a sense of disorientation, as if the world itself has shifted slightly out of alignment. The mist often swirls around the spectral vessel, obscuring details while highlighting others. The rigging seems to shimmer unnaturally, the sails taut yet motionless, and the lanterns glow with a steady, unearthly light. Observers report an immediate emotional response, awe, mixed with unease, a feeling that the ship is not merely a visual apparition, but a vessel carrying the weight of lives lost long ago. Some sailors recount that as they approach the location, the ship seems to vanish entirely, dissolving into the fog or retreating into the horizon. Others report that when they attempt to draw closer, the water deepens suddenly, or waves rise unnaturally, as though the phantom vessel is protected by forces beyond human understanding. In every account, the ship is ephemeral, its appearance brief but unforgettable. The witnesses are left with a lingering impression of something both beautiful and mournful, a reminder that the sea holds memories far older than any lighthouse. Local legend ties the phantom ship to the numerous maritime tragedies near St. Simon's Island. Over the centuries, countless ships have been lost to storms, hidden shoals, or navigational errors, leaving sailors stranded or drowning in the unforgiving waters. Some believe the phantom vessel is a manifestation of these doomed ships, their souls forever adrift, unable to find rest. Each appearance is said to serve as a reminder of the island's maritime history and the lives claimed by its surrounding waters. The ship is not merely a ghostly image, but a symbol of unresolved loss, a spectral echo of tragedy repeated over time. One particularly vivid account comes from a seasoned sailor navigating near the island in the late 1800s. On a night when fog had fallen unexpectedly, he spotted a ship on the horizon, its lanterns casting a dim glow through the mist. He attempted to approach, hoping to offer aid, but as he drew closer, the vessel appeared to flicker and fade. Within moments, it had disappeared entirely, leaving only the faint sound of wind over the water. The sailor, though deeply experienced, described feeling an inexplicable sorrow, as though the ship carried not just cargo or crew, but the lingering anguish of countless lives. Modern sightings continue, even as ships have become more technologically advanced and navigation safer. Coast Guard personnel, ferry operators, and fishermen have all reported instances where a spectral vessel appeared briefly in dense fog. Photographs are rare and often inconclusive, yet multiple accounts suggest that the phenomenon is enduring. Some paranormal researchers theorize that the lighthouse's light interacts with the lingering energy of past maritime tragedies, manifesting the forms of ships lost to the waters. Others interpret the sightings as residual hauntings, echoes of intense emotional events imprinted onto the environment, replaying intermittently for those attuned to them. The phantom ship is often described as silent, gliding across the water without the creak of wood or the slap of waves against its hull. This quiet adds to the eeriness, making its appearance feel like an intrusion into the natural world. Witnesses report that the surrounding fog seems to respond to the ship, thickening or swirling as it moves, creating an atmosphere of isolation and suspense. The effect is disorienting, drawing attention to the impermanence of the world and the fragile boundary between the living and the dead. The spectral vessel also serves as a cautionary symbol. For sailors of the past, stories of the phantom ship reinforce the dangers of navigating near St. Simon's Island, particularly in fog or stormy conditions. Even today, the legend reminds observers of the unpredictable power of the sea and the necessity of respecting it. The lighthouse, though steadfast, cannot shield against all hazards, and the phantom ship stands as a haunting reminder of human vulnerability in the face of nature's might. For those who have seen it, the phantom ship leaves an indelible impression. It is more than an apparition. It is a connection to history, to the countless lives intertwined with the waters around St. Simon's Island. Some sailors feel sorrow, others awe, and still others a mixture of both, recognizing in the fleeting image a story of devotion, loss, and the eternal vigilance of the sea. The lighthouse continues its duty, casting its protective light across the dark waters, guiding vessels away from danger. Yet the phantom ship reminds all who witness it that some dangers and some spirits cannot be fully tamed or explained. On foggy nights, when the air is thick and the horizon barely visible, the spectral vessel may appear, gliding silently across the waves, a ghostly echo of the countless ships and souls forever tied to the coast of St. Simon's Island. It is a vision of beauty and sorrow, warning and remembrance. A story written upon the waters that continues to unfold for those who dare to look. The lighthouse of St. Simon's Island has long been a sentinel for sailors, its beam cutting through fog, storms, and darkness to guide vessels safely past treacherous shoals. For generations, human keepers tended the light, ensuring it never faltered, no matter the hour or weather. Even after automation and modern technology replaced much of the manual labor, stories persist of a presence that continues to watch over the lighthouse, a spectral keeper whose vigilance defies death itself. Many of these reports center around the behavior of the lighthouse light. On otherwise calm nights, the beam has been observed behaving strangely, sweeping in irregular patterns, flickering unexpectedly, or dimming and brightening as though following an invisible rhythm. Mariners who rely on the light occasionally report brief moments of confusion, only to see the beam resume its normal function moments later. To some, these anomalies are mere technical glitches, a quirk of machinery or human error. But for those familiar with the lighthouse's history, there is a deeper, more compelling explanation. The spirit of a former keeper, continuing his duty even beyond the grave. The legend of the Keeper's Watch dates back to the late 1800s, when lighthouse keepers lived in isolated quarters adjacent to the tower, their days dictated by the rotation of the light and the needs of the sea. One particular keeper, known for his devotion and precision, reportedly took his responsibilities to the extreme. Stories suggest that he would remain at his post through violent storms, sometimes for days at a time, ensuring the safety of sailors navigating the perilous waters near the island. His dedication was legendary, but it came at a cost. His health deteriorated, and he ultimately died while still on duty. Since his passing, the lighthouse has seen technological advancements, yet the anomalies in the light have persisted. Witnesses describe the beam performing actions that no automated system would normally allow. It swings beyond its programmed rotation, lingers on certain areas longer than expected, or pulses in a pattern that seems purposeful, as though someone or something is actively monitoring the waters below. Some visitors report that the light seems to respond to movement on the grounds. A shadow near the base of the tower might cause the beam to shift slightly, or an unexpected presence on the balcony might make it pulse briefly, as though acknowledging an intruder. One account comes from a night tour guide who observed the light for hours during a particularly foggy evening. She noted that the automated mechanisms were functioning normally, yet the beam seemed to wander, momentarily illuminating areas of the shore that should have been outside its path. At one point, the light swung toward the distant horizon, pausing just long enough for her to glimpse a small sailboat, invisible moments earlier. The effect was unnerving yet awe-inspiring, a reminder of the lighthouse's continuing role as a guardian of the coast. perhaps guided by a presence that refuses to rest. Maritime workers have also shared stories. A local fisherman described returning to port late one foggy night, observing the lighthouse light behaved erratically, sweeping in a pattern he had never seen before. Moments later, he passed a hazardous shoal that had claimed many ships over the years, a shoal that was not typically highlighted by the light's automated path. The beam lingered just long enough to illuminate the rocks, preventing what might have been a disastrous encounter. He later reflected that the light seemed aware, deliberate, and purposeful, almost as if a vigilant keeper was performing his duties from beyond the grave. Paranormal researchers visiting the lighthouse have documented these anomalies with cameras and timing equipment. While some fluctuations can be explained by wind, fog, or technical malfunctions, others remain inexplicable. The light occasionally sweeps with precision that defies mechanical programming, or it shifts instantly without any detectable human intervention. Witnesses often describe a heightened sense of presence during these occurrences. A subtle pressure in the air, a faint whisper, or the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The keeper's watch, as it has come to be known, seems to extend its vigilance not only over ships, but over the visitors to the lighthouse itself. The phenomenon is often interpreted symbolically as well as literally. Some believe the light's erratic behavior is a message, a reminder that those who served the lighthouse devoted themselves entirely to duty, and that such devotion leaves an imprint, a lingering energy that continues to guide and protect. The spectral keeper is not malevolent. Rather, he is attentive, careful, and tireless, a guardian who refuses to abandon his post, even in death. The irregularities in the light, then, are not errors, but signs of care, subtle indications that the lighthouse is more than a structure of stone and glass. It is a living chronicle of commitment, memory, and vigilance. Visitors often describe mixed emotions during these experiences. The sight of the beam acting independently can inspire awe and wonder, but it can also create a sense of unease, a reminder that the lighthouse is a place where the past and present coexist. Some describe the presence as comforting, reassuring, even protective, while others feel a prickling tension, an awareness that unseen eyes are always monitoring. In every case, the keeper's watch leaves an indelible impression, reinforcing the idea that St. Simon's Island's lighthouse is more than a navigational aid, is a sentinel, both physical and spectral. Even today, as technology continues to advance, the lighthouse light maintains its ancient purpose, guiding ships safely, warding off disaster, and perhaps carrying on the legacy of those who once tended it. The keeper's watch reminds all who approach the tower that some duties extend beyond life itself. Every sweep of the beam, every pause and flicker, serves as a quiet testament to the dedication of those who devoted themselves to the lighthouse. For those who witness it, the light is not merely mechanical. It is alive with history, vigilance, and the presence of a keeper who continues to watch, tirelessly, eternally, ensuring that the shores of St. Simon's Island remain safe for all who navigate its waters. The museum at St. Simon's Island's lighthouse stands as a testament to centuries of maritime history, preserving the tools, artifacts, and stories of those who dedicated their lives to guiding ships safely through treacherous waters. Yet, among the carefully curated exhibits and polished floors, there exists a more elusive, intangible collection, one of lingering spirits and unexplained phenomena that have baffled and intrigued visitors for decades. The Haunted Museum, as it has come to be known, is a space where the past does not simply remain on display, but interacts with the present in ways both subtle and unnerving. Visitors often report their first encounters with the supernatural almost immediately upon entering. Some notice the air grows inexplicably cold, a sudden chill that is localized to certain areas and defies explanation. Even on warm, sunny days, the temperature in parts of the museum can drop sharply, leaving goosebumps in its wake. Tour guides and staff have long acknowledged these occurrences, noting that the cold spots are often accompanied by a feeling of being observed, an invisible presence that seems to watch visitors as they move among the exhibits. Exhibits themselves are frequently the center of strange activity, objects that should remain stationary models of ships, Navigational instruments, and even heavy display cases, have been reported as moving slightly, shifting positions without any logical cause. Visitors sometimes arrive to find a small artifact tilted or turned, as if someone or something has adjusted it. In some cases, lights have flickered or dimmed when no electrical fault is present, creating brief but unsettling moments of darkness that accentuate the museum's already mysterious atmosphere. One particularly compelling account comes from a group of students visiting the museum during a school trip. As they moved through the nautical exhibits, several reported hearing faint footsteps on the polished floors behind them, despite the fact that no one else was present. When they turned to investigate, there was no one in sight. Moments later, a display case containing an antique compass shifted slightly, the compass needle pointing in a direction that seemed deliberately aligned with the open doorway. The students described an immediate feeling of tension, a sense that they had intruded upon something unseen but deeply aware. Staff members who spend extended periods within the museum report similar experiences. Many have noted that the phenomena tend to occur during quiet hours, when the building is nearly empty. Footsteps echo in the halls, faint whispers seem to drift from empty rooms, and doors close gently on their own. At times, a shadow appears just beyond the corner of vision, vanishing the instant it is directly observed. While some dismiss these incidents as tricks of the mind, the consistency of reports across decades and among different witnesses suggests that the museum harbors an active and persistent presence. Paranormal investigators have visited the museum repeatedly, documenting anomalies that seem to support the accounts of visitors and staff. Thermal imaging has captured sudden pockets of cold, often in areas where no ventilation could explain them. Motion sensors occasionally register movement where no person is present, and audio recordings reveal faint whispers or the subtle scrape of an object being shifted. While skeptics argue that some occurrences could be attributed to the building's age or minor structural movements, many researchers are convinced that the manifestations are tied to lingering energies of the lighthouse's past keepers and residents. The spirits within the museum are thought to be closely connected to the lighthouse itself. Many of the artifacts on display belonged to former keepers or were used in day-to-day operations of the lighthouse. In life, these individuals were dedicated to the safety of ships and sailors, and it is believed that in death they remain attentive, continuing their watch in subtle ways. The moving objects, flickering lights, and temperature fluctuations may be interpreted as these spirits interacting with the material world, asserting their presence while ensuring that the stories of the lighthouse are remembered. One enduring theory is that the museum serves as a focal point for residual energy. The lighthouse grounds have been a site of countless intense moments, shipwrecks, storms, and the lives of those who maintained the beacon. Objects within the museum, having been part of these lives, may retain traces of the energy associated with their use. When visitors enter the space, the residual energy may respond, creating phenomena that are perceptible to the living. In this sense, the museum becomes more than a repository of artifacts. It is a living extension of the lighthouse's history, a place where past and present intersect. Visitors often report mixed emotions during these encounters. The phenomena are generally non-threatening, but they create a palpable sense of otherworldliness that can be both fascinating and unsettling. Some describe a feeling of connection to the lighthouse's past, a recognition that the people who once tended the light are still observing and protecting the space. Others feel a mild apprehension, a reminder that the museum is not merely a building but a stage for the lingering presence of those who came before. The Haunted Museum thus occupies a unique place in the lore of St. Simon's Island. It is a space where history is tangible, not only in artifacts, but in the energy that remains, where the stories of keepers, mariners, and residents continue to unfold in subtle, often inexplicable ways. The cold drafts, shifting objects, flickering lights, and whispered voices are reminders that the past is never truly gone. It inhabits the museum alongside the living, guiding, observing, and occasionally interacting with those who enter. For those who walk its halls, the museum is a place of reflection and reverence. It is a reminder that the lighthouse is more than stone and metal, and that the people who tended it were bound not only to duty but to the island itself. Every phenomenon, every flicker, whisper, or movement serves as an invitation to acknowledge the unseen, to consider the dedication, sacrifice, and presence of those who continue their watch beyond the confines of life. The Haunted Museum ensures that the legacy of the lighthouse remains alive, a bridge between the living and the spirits who inhabit St. Simon's Island. In the quiet corners of the museum, where the artifacts stand in careful arrangement, visitors may feel a presence that is at once protective and mysterious. It is a subtle but persistent reminder that the lighthouse's history is not confined to the past, but continues to resonate in the present. The spirits within the museum are not merely echoes. They are guardians, witnesses, and participants in the ongoing story of the lighthouse, ensuring that all who enter are aware of the enduring power of history and the unseen. St. Simon's Island Lighthouse is not only a beacon for sailors navigating treacherous waters, it is also a beacon for the memories of those who once lived and worked there. Among the most compelling stories associated with the lighthouse are the numerous accounts of ghostly apparitions, figures that appear within the tower, along the grounds, and even near the keeper's dwelling. These spectral visitors are often seen in period clothing, their presence suggesting that the past is not truly gone, but lingers, echoing through time and space. Witnesses describe encountering these apparitions at various times of day. Though many sightings occur during the quiet hours, just before dawn or after dusk, visitors walking the spiral staircase have reported seeing figures in 19th-century keeper uniforms, sometimes pacing methodically, as if performing their duties long after death. Others have glimpsed women in long dresses and bonnets, appearing briefly near the windows or along the grounds, only to vanish when approached. The details of their clothing and demeanor suggest that these are not mere shadows, but echoes of individuals who lived, worked, and devoted themselves to the lighthouse. One particularly vivid account comes from a couple visiting the lighthouse on a foggy evening. As they ascended the spiral staircase, they noticed a man ahead of them, wearing a uniform reminiscent of late 1800s keepers. He moved deliberately, inspecting the light and adjusting imaginary equipment, seemingly unaware of their presence. When they called out, the figure vanished, leaving behind only the faint scent of tobacco and candle wax. The couple described feeling an odd mixture of awe and unease, a sense that the figure was both guarding the lighthouse and lingering in its memory. The keeper's dwelling is another frequent site for sightings. Guests and staff have reported seeing figures moving through the rooms, often performing domestic tasks such as tidying furniture, opening drawers, or handling utensils. These apparitions are typically non-threatening, yet their sudden appearances can be startling. One visitor described seeing a woman in a long, flowing dress crossing the hallway to the kitchen, only to disappear as she reached the door. The presence of these figures adds a layer of intimacy to the haunting, suggesting that the spirits are not merely echoes of tragedy, but of everyday life, continuing routines that once defined their existence. Ghostly figures are not always stationary. On the lighthouse grounds, visitors often report seeing figures walking along the pathways, sometimes near the edge of the cliffs, gazing out at the sea. These apparitions are frequently described as moving with purpose, as if still fulfilling duties that extend beyond life. Some witnesses claim to have observed figures pointing toward distant ships or inspecting the surrounding terrain, behaviors that echo the vigilance of lighthouse keepers and residents over the years. Others see figures appearing momentarily at the edges of their vision, glimpses of faces or silhouettes that vanish when focused upon directly. The apparitions often appear to interact with the environment in subtle ways. Visitors have reported doors creaking open or closing seemingly on their own, lights flickering, and even small objects being shifted or moved. These phenomena accompany sightings, reinforcing the sense that the ghosts are active participants within the space, maintaining their routines, or perhaps signaling their presence to the living. Some researchers theorize that these interactions are residual energy, manifestations of strong emotional attachment to the lighthouse. or intentional communications by spirits who have chosen to remain near the place they once called home. Paranormal investigators have documented numerous instances of apparitions. Using thermal imaging, infrared cameras, and audio recording devices, they have captured anomalies that align with eyewitness reports. Cold spots, shadowy movements, and fleeting images of figures in historical attire frequently appear on recordings, often in areas where visitors have described sightings. While skeptics argue that optical illusions or building imperfections might explain some visual phenomena, the consistency of descriptions across decades, locations, and witness backgrounds suggests something more profound, a lingering presence bound to the lighthouse and its history. The ghostly apparitions are not limited to any one era. Some figures reflect the attire and appearance of keepers from the 19th century, while others seem to represent residents from the early 20th century. This range suggests that the lighthouse acts as a repository of memory, preserving the essence of those who once lived there. The figures appear to embody devotion, vigilance, and domestic life, providing a glimpse into the daily existence of individuals whose lives were intimately connected to the tower, its light, and the surrounding island. Emotional responses to these apparitions vary widely. Many witnesses describe a sense of peace and connection, as though they are briefly allowed to witness history come alive. Others feel a sense of melancholy or unease, recognizing that the figures they see are echoes of lives ended long ago, continuing routines in a realm invisible to most. The experience of seeing a ghostly figure in period clothing is both haunting and beautiful, offering a tangible connection to the past that transcends traditional historical interpretation. The continued presence of these apparitions underscores the lighthouse's role as more than a functional structure. It is a vessel of memory, a space where the past and present converge. Each figure, observed whether a vigilant keeper, a domestic caretaker, or a solitary observer of the sea, serves as a reminder of the human lives entwined with the lighthouse, the dedication and vigilance that shaped its history, and the ways in which memory can persist long after death. For those walking the lighthouse grounds or ascending the spiral staircase, the ghostly apparitions transform the experience. Visitors are reminded that the lighthouse is not just a relic of the past, but a living archive of the people who shaped its story. These spectral figures, dressed in the attire of their own time, remain ever present, ensuring that the legacy of the lighthouse and its residents endures, bridging the gap between history and the supernatural. Whether fleeting shadows or fully realized figures in period clothing, the ghostly apparitions of St. Simon's Island Lighthouse continue to captivate, intrigue, and unsettle all who encounter them, offering a haunting yet poignant reminder that some presences, like the light itself, never truly fade. The lighthouse on St. Simon's Island has stood for centuries, its white tower a steadfast guide for sailors navigating the rocky coastline. While its beam serves as a symbol of safety and vigilance, the interior of the lighthouse tells a different story, one filled with mysterious sounds that have puzzled staff, visitors, and researchers alike. These unexplained noises, footsteps echoing in empty halls, doors creaking open and closed, and furniture shifting seemingly on its own half, become a defining aspect of the lighthouse's haunted reputation. Reports of these phenomena are frequent and consistent. Visitors walking through the spiral staircase have described hearing the unmistakable sound of boots striking metal steps above or below them. Yet, when they turn to investigate, the staircase is empty. The sound is deliberate, measured, and eerily similar to the rhythm of former keepers making their rounds. Some witnesses claim that these phantom footsteps move independently of anyone present, appearing in locations where the lighthouse staff know no one should be, as if the spirits are continuing their duties long after death. Doors are another common source of unexplained noises. Staff members often arrive early in the morning to find doors to storage rooms or offices slightly ajar, even when they were secured the previous evening. At times, doors open and close with no human interaction, accompanied by faint creaking or rattling that resonates through the otherwise silent building. Some visitors have described hearing a series of knocks or taps on interior walls, a soft rhythm that seems to echo from within the lighthouse itself. These sounds are not only mysterious but unnerving, creating a sense that the building is alive with hidden activity. Furniture moving on its own adds another layer of the uncanny. Chairs have been found shifted from their original positions, desks slightly rotated, or display cabinets ajar, as if someone had handled them moments before. In certain rooms, heavier objects, such as tables or storage chests, appear to have been nudged or tipped subtly, leaving witnesses to question whether they truly experienced a paranormal event or if the building itself played tricks on their perception. Many who have worked in the lighthouse report these occurrences as part of their daily experience, a reminder that this historic structure is more than wood, metal, and glass. It is a space infused with residual energy and lingering presences. The timing of these noises often coincides with periods of quiet, when the lighthouse is largely empty. Tour groups passing through during the day sometimes hear nothing unusual. Yet staff working alone in the evenings report heightened activity. Some have described walking along the hallways and hearing the faintest echoes of conversation or whispers, the words indistinct but unmistakably human in tone. Other witnesses report the sound of doors slamming or furniture scraping across the floor, moments before a sudden drop in temperature, reinforcing the sensation that these noises are tied to the presence of spirits rather than mundane causes. One memorable account comes from a museum volunteer who stayed late one evening to organize archival materials. While working alone, she heard the soft creak of the spiral staircase above her, followed by a steady rhythm of footsteps descending toward her location. When she looked up, no one was there. Moments later, a small display case she had just finished arranging shifted slightly, its contents rattling gently. The volunteer described a palpable sensation of being observed, a feeling that the lighthouse itself was watching and interacting with her presence. Though frightened, she reported feeling a strange connection to the past keepers and residents, as if they were acknowledging her presence while continuing their eternal watch. Paranormal investigators have visited the lighthouse numerous times to document these occurrences. Using audio recording equipment, thermal cameras, and motion sensors, they have captured anomalies that align with the accounts of staff and visitors. Audio recordings occasionally pick up faint footsteps, soft knocks, and other unexplained sounds when no one is present. Thermal imaging sometimes reveals brief pockets of cold or faint, shadowy shapes moving through areas associated with these noises. While skeptics attribute some events to the building's age, natural acoustics, or settling floors, the consistency and specificity of reports suggest a supernatural element, one that transcends simple mechanical or structural explanations. The significance of these unexplained noises may be tied to the lighthouse's long history of human activity. Generations of keepers and their families have lived and worked in the tower, their routines and responsibilities leaving a lasting imprint on the building. The creaks, footsteps, and movements may be interpreted as echoes of these past lives. Residual energy replaying in patterns familiar to those who once inhabited the space. Some theories suggest that the noises are intentional, manifestations of spirits who remain connected to the lighthouse, continuing their duties or communicating with the living. For many visitors, these sounds are both unnerving and fascinating. The creak of a staircase, the soft thump of unseen footsteps, or the faint scrape of furniture evokes a visceral awareness of the lighthouse's history and the presence of those who once walked its halls. While some approach these experiences with fear, others feel a sense of connection, an opportunity to witness the lingering echoes of lives devoted to the sea, to the light, and to the safety of others. The unexplained noises of St. Simon's Island Lighthouse remind all who enter that this is not just a building. It is a living archive of human devotion and loss. Every creak, knock, and shuffle carries a story, a memory that refuses to fade, a presence that continues to linger. Staff and visitors alike are left with the impression that the lighthouse is more than stone, metal, and glass. It is a guardian of memory, a place where the past and present intersect, and where the unseen keepers maintain their watch in sound and silence alike. For those who step into the lighthouse alone or late in the day, the experience is unforgettable. The unexplained noises serve as a bridge between eras, a subtle reminder that the lighthouse is home to more than artifacts and history. It is home to spirits who remain, whose footsteps echo through the halls, whose presence can be felt in the shifting air, and whose legacy continues to resonate through every unexplained sound that reverberates from its walls. St. Simon's Island Lighthouse has long drawn visitors eager to explore its historic tower, learn about maritime history, and witness the sweeping views of the Atlantic coastline. Yet for many, the allure of the lighthouse extends far beyond its architecture and history. Guided tours often include stories of ghostly apparitions, unexplained noises, and eerie phenomena, offering a first-hand glimpse into the lighthouse's haunted legacy. For some visitors, these tours are not merely educational, they are experiences that leave a lasting impression, blurring the line between history and the supernatural. The haunted lighthouse tours are led by guides well-versed in both the lighthouse past and its spectral legends. As groups ascend the spiral staircase or explore the keeper's dwelling, guides recount tales of former keepers, shipwrecks, and the spirits said to linger on the grounds. Visitors often report an immediate change in atmosphere during these stories. The air seems to grow heavier, shadows appear to lengthen, and the quiet moments between narration are often punctuated by sounds that cannot be explained, footsteps echoing where no one walks, the creak of doors in empty rooms, or sudden chilling drafts. Many participants describe a sense of unease that begins subtly but intensifies as the tour progresses. Some claim to feel the presence of unseen observers, particularly near the tower's highest levels, where the view of the ocean is expansive, but the air is dense with history. Others report a sensation of being followed, or of shadows moving just beyond their vision, vanishing when they turn to look. The experience is often heightened in the lighthouse at dusk, when the last rays of sunlight fade and the interior corridors grow dark. In these moments, the lighthouse feels alive in ways that cannot be measured or fully explained. A recurring story involves visitors ascending the spiral staircase and hearing phantom footsteps behind them. They may pause, only to find no one there, yet the sound continues or suddenly ceases, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Many interpret these sounds as the spirits of former keepers, eternally performing their duties, patrolling the tower, and ensuring the light remains vigilant. Some witnesses report a sense of being acknowledged by these unseen entities, an awareness that their presence has been noted. A subtle, almost imperceptible interaction between the living and the past. The keeper's dwelling is another focal point of the haunted lighthouse tours. Visitors often recount seeing figures in period clothing, women in long dresses or men in keeper uniforms, moving through the rooms or performing daily tasks as though time has not passed. These sightings are fleeting, often observed out of the corner of the eye, and vanish when approached. Furniture occasionally shifts, doors open or close unexpectedly, and the temperature can drop suddenly, leaving participants with goosebumps and a profound sense that the building itself is imbued with history and lingering presence. Tour guides have also noted that some visitors experience phenomena more intensely than others. While some may feel a subtle chill or hear faint whispers, others report more direct interactions, such as hearing clear footsteps behind them, or witnessing objects move slightly, and audio equipment occasionally picks up faint, indistinct voices that cannot be attributed to tour participants or environmental noise. These experiences lend credibility to the long-standing reputation of the lighthouse as a place where the supernatural intersects with the historical. One memorable account comes from a group visiting late on a foggy evening. As they ascended the spiral staircase, a soft, rhythmic tapping echoed from above, growing steadily louder with each step. The group paused, looking up to see no one on the stairs, yet the tapping continued and then stopped abruptly. Moments later, a lantern hanging near the top of the tower flickered to life, even though it had been turned off earlier. The visitors described an overwhelming sensation of being observed by unseen eyes, and several reported feeling as if a former keeper had momentarily acknowledged their presence. The haunted lighthouse tours do more than entertain. They serve as a bridge between the past and present. Visitors gain a sense of the human lives intertwined with the lighthouse, the dedication, isolation, and vigilance of the keepers, as well as the tragedies and losses that occurred in its shadow. The reported paranormal, phenomenal footsteps, flickering lights, sudden chills, and fleeting apparitions enhance this connection, allowing participants to experience history not just intellectually, but emotionally and viscerally. For many, the tours are both exhilarating and unsettling. Some leave with a heightened respect for the lighthouse, its history, and the people who lived and worked there. Others leave with stories of ghostly encounters they will recount for years, sharing the inexplicable moments that made them feel as if the lighthouse was alive with memory and presence. The combination of historical knowledge and supernatural storytelling ensures that each tour is unique, with participants often experiencing different phenomena depending on the time of day, weather, and even their own sensitivity to the environment. The lighthouse itself seems to participate in the tours, its walls, floors, and stairs responding to the presence of visitors. The building creaks and groans as though alive, shadows shift, and the light above the tower sometimes behaves in ways that defy explanation. Many guides believe these occurrences are the spirits of former keepers and residents interacting with the living, demonstrating that their watch over the lighthouse continues even now. The tours are, in essence, a dialogue between the past and present, allowing participants to witness the enduring vigilance of those who once devoted their lives to the safety of sailors and the operation of the lighthouse. Ultimately, the haunted lighthouse tours offer more than stories and sightseeing. They are immersive experiences where history, memory, and the supernatural converge. Footsteps echo in empty corridors, doors move without cause, and shadows shift in subtle ways, all serving as reminders that the lighthouse is not merely a building, but a repository of human experience and lingering presence. Visitors leave with more than knowledge. They leave with the sense that the lighthouse, its keepers, and perhaps even its spirits, continue their eternal watch over St. Simon's Island. The St. Simon's Island Lighthouse stands as a sentinel over the Atlantic, a historic beacon that has guided sailors safely through treacherous waters for centuries. Its white tower, steadfast and imposing, is more than a navigational aid. It is a monument to the lives, stories, and sometimes tragedies that have unfolded on and around the island. The lighthouse has witnessed generations of maritime activity, storms that tested its endurance, and the quiet diligence of keepers who devoted their lives to maintaining its light. Its presence has inspired awe, respect, and, over time, countless tales of the unexplained and the supernatural. Today, the lighthouse operates as a museum, welcoming visitors from around the world who wish to explore its history, climb its spiral staircase, and learn about the lives of the men and women who once tended its beacon. The museum houses artifacts ranging from navigational instruments to personal belongings of former keepers, each item a tangible connection to the past. Yet beyond the physical exhibits, the lighthouse holds another kind of legacy, the lingering stories of ghostly apparitions, unexplained noises, and eerie phenomena that have become inseparable from its history. These stories ensure that the lighthouse is not only remembered as a structure of stone and glass, but also as a place where the past continues to echo into the present. Visitors to the lighthouse often describe a sense of stepping into a space where history and memory are tangible. The spiral staircase, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, seems to carry the weight of countless keepers ascending and descending to maintain the light. Reports of phantom footsteps echoing in the tower are frequent, suggesting that the dedication of past keepers has left a lasting imprint. Many claim to hear these footsteps when no one else is present, an auditory reminder that the lighthouse's history is not static, but continues to resonate. Whether interpreted as residual energy or the presence of spirits, these experiences deepen the sense of connection between past and present. The keeper's dwelling adjacent to the lighthouse adds another layer to its legacy. This Victorian-era home, once inhabited by the families of keepers, is now part of the museum experience. Visitors and staff alike have reported strange occurrences within the dwelling, doors opening and closing on their own, furniture shifting subtly, and the occasional glimpse of shadowy figures in period clothing. Some describe hearing children laughing in empty rooms, while others feel the sensation of unseen hands brushing against them. These phenomena suggest that the lives once lived here continue to linger, imbuing the space with memory, presence, and an undeniable aura of the unexplained. One of the most enduring elements of the lighthouse's haunted reputation is the story of the keeper's unwavering vigilance. Even after the lighthouse became automated, reports persisted of the light behaving erratically, weeping in unusual patterns, flickering, or momentarily dimming and brightening without cause. Many attribute these occurrences to the spirit of a former keeper, continuing his duties beyond death, ensuring that the beacon fulfills its purpose. This narrative reinforces the lighthouse's enduring role as a guardian of the coast, a symbol of dedication that transcends time. The museum itself serves as both a repository and a stage for these stories. Exhibits have been known to shift subtly, lights flicker, and cold drafts appear unexpectedly. Visitors often report hearing whispers, footsteps, and faint echoes of the past, as though the very walls of the museum are imbued with memories. Paranormal investigators have documented such occurrences, adding to the lighthouse's mystique. Yet whether one believes in the supernatural or not, these stories serve a deeper purpose. They preserve the human dimension of the lighthouse's history, reminding all who visit that behind every artifact and every brick is a story of dedication, sacrifice, and human experience. The ghostly tales surrounding the lighthouse, from spectral keepers performing eternal rounds to the playful apparitions of children in the keeper's dwelling, are more than mere entertainment. They are narrative threads that tie the island's past to the present, offering a way to engage with history on a personal and emotional level. Visitors leave with more than facts about maritime navigation. They leave with an impression of a place alive with memory, where the actions, hopes, and even tragedies of past generations continue to resonate. The St. Simon's Island Lighthouse also embodies the resilience and continuity of the island itself. Through hurricanes, storms, and the passage of time, the tower has stood firm, a symbol of stability in an ever-changing world. The lighthouse's enduring presence mirrors the island's own history marked by exploration, commerce, tragedy, and survival. The stories of hauntings, apparitions, and unexplained phenomena serve to enrich this history, creating a layered narrative where the tangible and intangible coexist, enhancing the depth of the visitor experience. Tour guides on the haunted lighthouse tours often emphasize this dual legacy, the historical and the spectral. By recounting tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplained noises, and strange occurrences, they allow visitors to connect with the lighthouse on multiple levels. These stories provoke curiosity, wonder, and reflection, offering a glimpse into the lives of those who lived, worked, and sometimes died in service to the light. The tours provide not only a historical overview, but also an immersive experience, inviting visitors to consider the human and supernatural elements intertwined in the lighthouse's legacy. Ultimately, the legacy of the St. Simon's Island Lighthouse is one of enduring fascination. It is a place where history is preserved in artifacts and architecture, where the dedication of generations of keepers is honored, and where the unexplained continues to captivate and intrigue. The stories of hauntings, apparitions, and strange phenomena are inseparable from the lighthouse itself, ensuring that its narrative extends beyond mere fact into the realm of legend and memory. Whether one believes in ghosts or views the lighthouse strictly as a historical site, the power of its legacy is undeniable. The St. Simon's Island Lighthouse Museum stands as a monument not only to maritime history, but to the human stories that give it life, the lives of keepers and their families, the sailors who depended on its guidance, and the spirits whose presence continues to echo through its halls. These tales ensure that the lighthouse remains more than a structure of stone and light. It is a living symbol of devotion, memory, and the enduring connection between past and present, captivating all who visit for generations to come. Thank you for joining us on this spine-chilling journey through the haunted history of the St. Simon's Island Lighthouse Museum. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more eerie stories from the world's most haunted places. Until next time, keep your lights burning bright and your curiosity alive.